Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us.
Israel and Iran trade a barrage of missiles, defying calls from President Trump for restraint.
The Prime Minister is preparing to announce a ban on under-16s using harmful social media, according to reports today.
President Zelensky reveals exclusively to Sky News how Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich is acting as a go-between in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine.
We'll also be talking to the former Crime Watch presenter and campaigner Nick Ross about his first-hand experience of a criminal justice system in crisis.
The Sikh community calls for an inquiry into Henry Novak's murder, saying they warned the police about his killer and that his death was preventable.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. Iran and Israel are trading missile strikes this morning. The ceasefire, if you can even call it a ceasefire, is in tatters. So let's bring you up to speed with the latest developments.
Well, overnight, Iran launched a wave of ballistic missiles against Israel, the first attack in 100 days. Iran said the strikes are in retaliation for Israel's continued attacks on Lebanon and called it the beginning of a full week of continuous strikes.
Well, Donald Trump has urged the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to hit back again. He told US media outlet Axios, "I'm going to call Bibi right now and tell him not to retaliate. Each of them had their fun. Israel had its strike. Iran had its strike. We don't need another one."
Well, it seems Israel wasn't in the mood to listen and this morning has launched strikes on military targets in western and central Iran. A short while ago, the Israel Defense Forces say another wave of Iranian missiles has been fired towards Israel and its defensive systems are working to intercept the threat.
We can talk now to our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons in Jerusalem for us and our US correspondent David Blevins in Washington. Adam, to you first. What is the latest when it comes to these strikes?
Yeah, welcome to Jerusalem, where there is presently an uneasy peace over this city, this country, and this region, while we hold our breath to see what will happen next. There is going to be a meeting of the Israeli cabinet in 2 hours from now. The Israeli military command is presently in a bunker. And there are suggestions that there may be activity in Iran at this very moment. It's a tense moment. I think you've got to look at this through two perspectives. One is the peace deal that was put in place 2 months ago to end that initial war between Iran, United States and Israel. And Donald Trump's continuing rhetoric about a peace deal being imminent, or on the other hand, him talking about the destruction of an entire civilization. Clearly, talks have been going on and they have been sporadic. The other lens you've got to look through is a deal that was struck in Washington just a few days ago involving Israel, United States and Lebanon, which was supposed to curtail, if not bring to an end, Israel's military activity against Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon. Now, within that deal, which Hezbollah did not sign up to, wasn't involved in negotiating, it dictated that Hezbollah should stop attacking the Israeli mainland and that Israel should stop its attacks on Beirut. It would appear yesterday that both of those things were breached, that Hezbollah fired rockets and Israel certainly did launch an attack on a southern suburb of Beirut. And that was the catalyst for this new exchange. Iran launched a series of missile waves last night towards northern and central Israel. All of those missiles were apparently intercepted. And then the question was, how would Israel respond? Donald Trump made it clear he didn't want a response. I think that was untenable for any Israeli prime minister to not respond. And so Israel has done so by attacking Iranian military infrastructure, potentially, I think, some of its petrochemical infrastructure as well. And then you have that question about, well, then Iran responding themselves. We saw missiles being intercepted in the sky above us this morning, a couple of very, very loud booms of interceptions for those. No reports of any casualties, no reports of confirmed reports of any damage on the ground. But of course, those things will have to be corroborated. And that's the path that leads us to now, to this point here, of debating whether or not Israel will respond to that, and whether we will start to get into one of those oscillating cycles of one attack, another, where, frankly, everyone forgets who started this and all you remember is that both sides are attacking each other. Or is this, as I think, and David will know better than I, is this, as Donald Trump is going to want, going to be a tit-for-tat attack that comes to an end and allows him space for negotiating? And at the moment, no one, I suspect even President Trump, knows what will happen next.
Adam, great stuff. Let's bring in David. David, Adam said there it was sort of untenable for Netanyahu not to respond in some way. Do we think President Trump agrees with that framing of it, or will he see this as a direct defiance from Netanyahu against his wishes?
Well, President Trump certainly knows what is at stake here. If this escalates, it dashes what is already a fading hope of there being any deal ever between the United States and Iran to bring this war to an end. And that perhaps explains why his response to these strikes last night has been entirely out of character. Just think about how hawkish his rhetoric about Iran has been in the past. He talks about obliterating it, about bombing it back to the Stone Ages. At one point, he threatened to wipe out a whole civilization. But instead of condemning the strikes on Israel, he simply appealed for Iran to return to the negotiating table and to do a deal. And then, on the other hand, just think about how close an ally he has been of Israel and of Benjamin Netanyahu in particular. And it is incredibly unusual for this president to be urging this Israeli prime minister to not retaliate, to show restraint, to give negotiations a chance. Now, we knew relations between them were already strained. There was a very heated exchange between the two men last week when Trump called Netanyahu, and I quote, effing crazy for bombing Lebanon. And the signs weren't good last night when the telephone call between them lasted only half an hour. And we now know that President Trump has not been able to persuade Netanyahu to hold back. There has been retaliation, and we seem to have now entered this cycle of tit-for-tat strikes. So at the very moment when President Trump is trying to extract the United States from this war to get a deal done, and remember, it's 10 days since he told us he was going into the Situation Room to make a final determination on a draft, and we still don't have a deal. At the very moment he's trying to get there, it's the very moment when there's a very real danger of the United States being drawn further into this conflict.
David and Adam, thank you both so much. Great stuff. By the way, unsurprisingly, oil prices up. By the way, increasingly so as well as the last few hours have gone. When we came in, it was up a couple of percent. It's now up 5%, back to 97.50 on Brent. Late last week, we'd got to the low 90s, back to the high 90s now. I guess you'd say unsurprisingly, you know, just to state the obvious, not only is the ceasefire breaking down, but the strait is even further from being reopened. And we're going to talk about this in more detail later in the programme. At 8:30, we'll be speaking to the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, so make sure to stay tuned for that.
We're going to talk about a potential ban on social media next. One of the biggest talking points, I think, of this generation in some ways. And there are reports out today that the Prime Minister is preparing to announce a ban on under-16s using, and I think this word is important, what they're describing as harmful social media. So what is going on? We can bring in our political correspondent, Alex Rogers. So this isn't an official announcement. No one's officially saying anything. But all the mood music is that Keir Starmer is preparing to do this.
Yeah, so it's been so heavily trailed, it's sort of splashed across the pages of the Times. It's been talked about for so long. And what I'm hearing as well, picking up that it's going to happen at some point this week. The Prime Minister is under so much pressure, his own leadership, looking for a legacy. Now, if he does implement this ban, the Times is saying that he wants to stop some high-risk platforms while allowing access to some that are maybe a bit safer. So we don't really know what that looks like, what is considered high risk, what is considered safe. So it does feel like maybe the debate around that could prolong things as well. Is there a bit more of kicking the can down the road? But he does want to be seen to be doing something, so sort of laying the groundwork again.
I just think there are two things that could happen here that are both so different. You either go for the ban on under-16s using social media, like Australia, but if they talk about harmful social media, is this just going to be, if platforms don't agree to do X, Y, Z as called for by people like the Molly Rose Foundation, then they will be banned, which feels like a very different thing from a blanket ban. I guess we don't know the details yet, but, you know, it's not really clear to me.
And I think that's the divide they're trying to straddle. They don't want to anger the tech companies. They want to keep them on side. So they probably want the tech companies to come up with the regulation themselves rather than having to legislate, just, you know, to ease relations with them, I guess, and America as well.
It's interesting timing for two reasons, because it's London Tech Week. He's speaking at London Tech Week and we'll have his speech live at 9 a.m. The speech meant to be on AI much more than this potential social media ban, but it might come up, I guess. So I think it's interesting timing for that this is coming out, possibly not today, but later this week, whilst he's trying to woo the big tech companies to announce something that they perhaps wouldn't welcome. And then, as alluded to, it's also 10, 11 days before the by-election. I kind of see that more as not so much to establish a legacy if he goes, but to establish something to prevent that.
I think that's right as well, to try and get MPs back on side. Maybe he can woo them with some policies. We know that the social media ban is really popular. I think 3/4 of Brits want the government to do something in this space. So maybe he thinks, you know, the last roll of the dice is bringing in some crowd pleasers for Labour MPs.
Yeah, like I say, popular with the public, and also there's a lot of Labour MPs who've been pushing for it behind the scenes as well. Alex, thank you very much.
And by the way, at 9:40, we'll be speaking to the former Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, on new rules on children's screen use and that story about a potential social media ban. Of course, as we said, we'll take the Prime Minister's speech at London Tech Week live shortly after 9 a.m. as well.
Yeah, interesting to hear from Jess Phillips, because she, of course, resigned from the government call for Keir Starmer to go. And in this blistering resignation letter, she said part of the reason was because he wasn't doing enough quickly enough to protect children online. So interesting to get her take today.
Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the UK trying to shore up support from key European allies. He's meeting King Charles later today after visiting Keir Starmer in Downing Street yesterday.
And Keir Starmer's not the only person that he met. He was also there with the French President Emmanuel Macron and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as well. They discussed ramping up weapons production to combat powerful Russian missiles.
Well, ahead of those talks, President Zelensky spoke exclusively to Sky's Yada Hakim and revealed how he'd held talks with Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich and discussed whether he'd be willing to freeze current battle lines in the war.
Of course, I want to freeze, not just freeze the conflict, because we want to live in Ukraine, not just stop the war. We want to stop, and I mean, this stop the way when the war will not come back, because of some crazy people and etc., if they want to come back with this war after some pauses. So it's not the idea just to freeze, but the quickest way to freeze. And to freeze and move it to diplomatic sector, to diplomacy, to negotiators.
So give Russia what they want in this moment, the land that they have gained.
No. It's not just to give. I mean, this to freeze, to stay where we stay. It meant to give people of Ukraine more possibilities to save their children, and soldiers come back. And I think this is important for us. I think it's so important that we defended independence, a sovereign country, our choice. This is big victory, if I can use such word, because I mean, when you have so many losses, it's not about victory.
And in the meantime, you'll reach out to the likes of Roman Abramovich and others to try and help you in that path?
Abramovich, he came to Kiev. He said that I think that, he said, I have a message direct to you, and I want to get message and take message from you and to give it to Putin.
So is he a go-between now?
When he got message from me, he said he will go directly to Putin. I said, okay, I'm ready to meet, not in Moscow, not in Belarus, and not in Minsk, and it's understandable why. And I said, you can choose any time from tomorrow, you can choose any day, any format. We can choose with President Trump. I'm sure that he will be ready to come. And we can do it with Europeans. I'm sure that everybody wants to help, or we can choose the way bilateral, just bilateral meeting. And we spoke about outcomes, what can be, and etc. I said, look, the best way, I think it's a big signal if we will meet and make ceasefire.
Yada's able to join us now. Yada, amazing stuff with President Zelensky last evening. There's so many news lines that have come out of it, and people should go and watch the full thing online. But I just thought also his demeanour has changed over the last 6 months since you last sat down with him. I mean, do you think he is feeling maybe not positive, but less negative about the prospects?
Yeah, good morning, Will, Sophie. You know, over the years, I've interviewed him several times, and I have to say, I've never seen him look so confident, so almost upbeat, because in many ways, this does symbolize a bit of a turning point for President Zelensky. You know, just about a year or so ago, you'll remember that infamous meeting in the Oval Office where President Trump said to him, "You have no cards." And I put that to him this time round. I said, a year ago, you met with the US president and he said to you, "You have no cards." You now have cards, because not only are they, for the first time since 2023, gaining ground, and the Russians are not moving ahead as they have every other year in this period, but we're also seeing the Ukrainians developing this kind of technology that, frankly, NATO, the Gulf states, the West needs and wants. The drone technology that the Ukrainians have managed to develop, and frankly, the Russians have also learnt from, has changed the whole nature of warfare. I was speaking to some military analysts last week, Wilf, and they said to me, this kind of technology has sort of almost changed the battlefield more than when tanks were introduced. And this is something that the Ukrainian people have done. So not only did he seem more confident, he was more sure of himself. And I also asked him about that letter that he sent in the last few days to President Vladimir Putin. And I said to him, you know, the letter was quite cheeky. Vladimir Putin described it as rude, and he sort of laughed and said, you know, you really should have seen the first copy of that letter, because frankly, it was worse. He referenced Vladimir Putin's age several times and said, you know, you've been in power for 26 years. It's time to move on. It's all catching up to you. You know, things aren't looking good for you. So this was a very different kind of Volodymyr Zelensky to the one that I've seen in the past. Now, of course, you can always play a good hand badly. So we'll have to see how this develops, because the summer offensive is about to begin. And, you know, this is the time in which things change on the battlefield. The Russians do make gains, and they have made gains in previous years. But things are slower for the Russians this year, including the impact on their economy, which has contracted this year, unlike previous years.
Yalda, there was so much to come out that interview with President Zelensky. I felt like I learned an awful lot about the peace talks, about where he's prepared to go, what he's prepared to sacrifice, but also this line, quite intriguingly, about the former owner of Chelsea, Roman Abramovich. Was that a surprise to you?
Yeah, it was interesting, Sophie, because this line came out, you know, sort of in the 10, 12 hours before the interview. And I thought, this is quite interesting. You know, what's this about? Because don't forget, Roman Abramovich has been a sort of player in these negotiations in the past. You know, he's been almost, that channel has been pushed by the Russians in the past when it's come to negotiations in Turkey, for example, a couple of years ago. His name has popped up in the past, and again, it appears that he is acting as some kind of go-between. And I put that to Volodymyr Zelensky. he sort of laughed and said, you know, the way that the Russians operate is they want everything done behind closed doors in secrecy. They don't want their things to be revealed. We've got nothing to hide. And he said, it's true, Roman Abramovich came to see me in Kiev. And he said, look, I don't want this to become public. Well, clearly, Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't going to listen to him because when I asked him and pushed him on that, he immediately confirmed that Roman Abramovich had been in Kiev. And I said, is he a go-between? And he said, well, I don't exactly know what he's doing, but he's certainly taking messages. He took a message from me back to Putin. And I guess at some point he is going to take a message back from Putin to Volodymyr Zelensky through some kind of, you know, either direct or indirect channel. So there are interesting things developing in this moment where Volodymyr Zelensky arrives with the E3, the European leaders, plus Ukraine, to begin some kind of negotiation. We know the likes of Roman Abramovich are starting to play a critical role in the background as well. And all of these things, I guess, symbolize that in some way, the Russians understand that they're potentially stuck. There are those who say that, frankly, Vladimir Putin could carry this on, you know, not happily. It is impacting him and is impacting his population. 70% of the Russian population are in the direct range of Ukrainian missiles and drones. But there are interesting developments in the background. So we'll have to wait and see whether any of these things shift and change. And he certainly made it clear to me that, you know, we can't just wait for Donald Trump, who is preoccupied in Iran and that war.
Yalda, absolutely fascinating. Look, nothing could be more important as well. Thank you so much for being on Mornings today. Now, we've got this big speech by the Prime Minister coming up. It's all about AI. There's also an awful lot of chatter, of course, about restricting social media for under-16s. Baroness Jackie Smith, the Women and Equalities Minister, is here. Great to have you with us as well. Also, Minister, I should say, in the Department for Work and Pensions as well, too.
And the Department for Education.
I mean, is there anything you're not a job in? But you've got the whole range. There's this big speech by the Prime Minister's later. You've got an announcement about AI and how it's helping the jobs market. But if I may, I just want to start on these reports that we're getting through, increasing reports about a potential ban on social media for under-16s. Is there anything you can tell us on what's going on here?
Well, of course, we set out in the spring a consultation to which we've received hundreds of thousands responses, as well as lots of engagement with ministers. Ministers are looking really carefully at that because we said at the time, look, this isn't a question of whether we will act on some of the concerns around social media use for young people. It's what we should most appropriately do. So we're looking at international evidence, we're looking at what we've heard, both from young people and parents themselves, but also what the expert evidence tells us. We said, and we legislated to say that on the basis of that consultation we would take action. We'll bring forward proposals before the summer recess and we'll take action before the end of the year.
The reporting seems to be about banning harmful social media. And I'm quite interested in this word harmful because how do you decide what's a harmful website? And I guess, you know, the whole point of social media is that it connects you to people around the world, which is amazing and great, but maybe not great if you're a child, right? Because it means letting strangers into your bedroom, right? That is effectively what it does. So I just don't really understand the debate about what social media is harmful and what isn't. Surely you're either for a ban for under-16s or you're not.
Well, the response to the consultation shows that actually there is quite a lot of nuance. So you've got organisations like the Molly Rose Foundation, like the NSPCC, who have concerns about what the implications, and 40 others, I think, who have concerns about what the implications of a complete social media ban might be.
So they're basically kind of... I would say that Molly Rose Foundation are effectively against the ban on social media for under-16s, right? That is kind of their position. This is what I'm saying. You have to pick a side. There are valid ones on either way. they say that you should effectively ban.
No, so the side we need to pick here is what is going to be most effective for protecting young people from the bad sides of social media, which I think all of us accept are there. That might mean going further than, for example, the social media ban in Australia went on certain functionalities. It might mean saying that there are certain things which should definitely be banned. There's consideration about what age any ban should happen at.
So
if it were easy,
that sounds
Sophie...
No, but Jack, that sounds to me like that's an argument against a blanket ban on social media for under-16s. That's what that sounds like to me.
Well, what it sounds like is... What it sounds like is this isn't as clear-cut as some people like to think it is, which is exactly why the government has taken the approach it's taken.
You've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice.
Well, you've got to make a decision about what, in a range of ways, is the most effective thing to do to protect young people from the disadvantages and the dangers of social media. That's what you've got to do. And the best way of doing that is by doing it based on evidence, by listening to what people say. Look, we're moving...
Well, 75% of people say
on this.
That there should be a ban.
We're moving quickly on this. We set out the basis of the consultation. We've consulted widely. We've already passed legislation to enable us to take action on it. We'll come forward before the summer with proposals about what that action should be, and we'll implement it during the course of this year.
There's also reports that you're looking at putting controls on phones that will block people under the age of 18 from sending nude pictures of themselves. Is that something that you're announcing?
On this point about nudification, there's more action that we need to take, but let's just remind ourselves that at the point at which, you know, the richest man in the world, through the Grok app, was causing there to be really disgusting images of people being circulated. It was our Prime Minister that stood up to him in those
it's still happening,
cases,
though. It's literally still happening, It is still happening. If anyone who uses X will see that it is still happening. So I don't understand why it's standing up. It's not still happening. Nothing's changed.
That's why Jessa Sato MP is taking action.
So you can't say Keir Starmer stood up to him because it's still happening.
But this is the whole issue about the world of technology. It moves fast, and as the Prime Minister will say today, what we need to keep doing is putting ourselves on the side of safety, on the side of opportunity for the vast range of people. So we will continue to take action where it's necessary, and we'll continue to make sure that technology is actually working for the benefit of people and all people rather than against them.
I just want to read you a bit of Jess Phillips's resignation letter on this thing about allowing the blocking of young people to put new pictures of themselves. She said over a year ago she presented solutions that would end the ability for children in the UK to take naked images of themselves. And to Keir Starmer, it's taken me a year to get you to agree to even threaten to legislate in this space. How many children were left without a safety net in the time we dilly-dallied and worried about tech bosses? It still hasn't happened yet, has it?
Look, Jess was frustrated. That's the reason, with a lot of things, that's the reason why, you know, very sadly, in my view, she stepped down from government. I think she wouldn't say that this government has not taken action on tackling violence against women and girls. She led a lot of that. The Prime Minister has made it a priority for the government to halve violence against women and girls over the next 10 years. We work across government on it, and there will be frustrations about different areas that we need to move faster on. We will continue to do that, and I'm sorry that Jess isn't continuing to lead it.
Are you frustrated?
Well, I'm frustrated that women and girls still face violence, both online and offline. That's why I'm part of the cross-government effort to try to change that.
Are you frustrated at the pace of change?
I believe that there's been, you know, listen, I've been in this job, or jobs as we were talking about, for less than 2 years. I've seen a hell of a lot of change over at that time. But none of us come into politics because we want to sort of sit on the status quo. We are impatient for change. We have a plan to change this country, and actually getting on with doing that is what my job are all about.
You got announcements on AI as well, right? What's the plan?
So what the Prime Minister is saying is AI will change the way that we work, bring challenges, but also bring a lot of opportunities. And what's important is that as this technology change happens, and it will do, the government is on the side of ensuring that that benefits the broadest range of people. So if we think about work, for example, what we're announcing today is the development of new tools that will help people, those who are looking for work, those who are perhaps thinking of changing jobs, to more effectively be able to think through what are my skills? Where are the jobs out there that I could do? It's a sort of job centre in your pocket, if you like. If you want to look at it, you can go to jobs.service.gov.uk and see the sorts of things that we're enabling people to use. Yesterday, we were talking about how we'll make sure that young people have the skills and the opportunities to work in the tech industry, which is growing enormously quickly, and where there are jobs for young people. Because I know that people quite often focus on the way in which technology might remove jobs, and we need to take action on that. But there are also opportunities to work out there. It's important that everybody gets those chances.
Just finally, you kind of mentioned it earlier when you said how, you've seen it all, right? You kind of experienced. And look, you're elected in 1997, so I'm interested in getting your perspective on this, because it feels to me like we're in a bit of a through-the-looking-glass moment. We've got this potential leadership challenge coming in a matter of weeks. We've had dozens of Labour MPs quitting and calling on the Prime Minister to resign, and we're kind of not talking about it. It's like the elephant in the room.
Really?
It's like the government's just
seem to be talking about it quite a lot, Sophie.
Yeah, but in government, it's just kind of like, let's just go on.
Well, yeah,
because what's happening.
Because actually, what we should be doing in government is cracking on with the change which we just described. I just described my sort of urge and frustration to deliver. So, yeah, of course, there is lots of talk about that, but day to day, what I come into work to do is to make sure that technology is working for everybody rather than only for a few, getting people back into work, making sure people have got the skills to grow the economy.
Are you pleased that this leadership challenge, if you like, is happening?
No.
Or do you think it's a distraction?
No, I'd rather we were cracking on with changing the country, which is what we got elected to do 2 years ago.
What would you say to your fellow MPs then who want to see that change?
I would say, I think it's important that we crack on and change the country.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Jackie Smith. Good to have you on the programme, as always.
A reminder, the Prime Minister giving a speech at London Tech Week coming up around 9 a.m. We'll have that for you live when it happens. And after this short break, we'll be talking to Ruth Davidson to discuss whether student loans should change, the system as a whole should change, as well as all of the latest political stories.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. Let's turn now to a campaign headed by the former Scottish Conservative leader and, of course, co-host or regular guest of the Electoral Dysfunction podcast, Ruth Davidson. She's calling for reform of England's student loan system with the Fair Fees campaign, arguing millions of graduates face decades of repayments and growing debt.
So the campaign is urging the government to overhaul what it describes as an unfair and unsustainable system.
Oh, she joins us now. Ruth, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning to you, Wilfred. How are you this morning?
We are all the better for seeing you. And look, this is a topic we've covered pretty closely on this programme. What is the headline of your take on it? I think we can all agree it's somewhat ludicrous, the extent of interest payments that certain generations are now paying. What's the solution in your eyes?
Well, look, I think we're coming to a moment where we've got critical mass. We've already got two select committees in the House of Commons. We've got MPs looking at this. There is an understanding. We've got all of the data that we need from the Institute for Fiscal Studies that have done a big report into this. We've even got the Conservative Party has changed its position on all of this. One of my other hats that I was wearing is that I'm the co-chair of a political movement called Prosper UK. We're trying to bring all of this together and building in the momentum we need from the public out there as well. That's why we've launched the Fair Fees campaign, where we want the public to come in and sign up and show the government the strength of feeling, because the last sort of piece of chess on the board, if you like, is to get the government to move on this, get the Treasury to move on this. So we know that we've got two select committees looking at it. We know that we've got movement from the opposition parties. What we now need is the public to galvanise, get together, sign up at www.fairfees.uk and move this government into making the changes that it needs, because there is a genuine understanding now that the system is not fair.
Given, I guess, the financial constraints and the fact that lots of people, when they're talking about social mobility, argue that actually the best thing to do on social mobility is to help kids younger rather than by the time they're at university, do we need to start looking at other ways to save money if we're going to do this when it comes to universities? So, for example, are too many people going to university, in your view?
Well, look, I'm not particularly here to look at the access to university, but I am here to look at what is it that's slowing the country down in terms of growth. And one of the things that Prosper was set up to deliver was to look at this low growth problem that we have in the UK. And time again, when we go out and we do events in Liverpool or in Edinburgh or in Cardiff or all the places around the country we've been, this idea that young people that are on their Plan 2 loan, that are sort of 21 to 35-year-old, that are paying an extra 9% of essentially now a tax, which is their loan repayment. It doesn't really work like a loan. It works like an extra tax. It means that it's impacting on what they can spend in the economy. It's impacting on the choices they can make in their life. If they want to go off, and set up a business, some of them think the risk is too high because of these debts that are hanging over their head, whether it comes to getting married, starting a family, owning a house. All of these things that help get the economy moving, as well as positive changes in their own life, they're hampered from. And it's a system that charges you interest at sort of 3% over RPI, which is not this way that we would even organise sort of benefits or welfare. There's no other system that works like that. And also you can have changes that are brought in after you've signed up, and that's manifestly not fair. We would never let a bank or a building society or another loan issuer do that. So student loans are uniquely unfair in terms of one of the vehicles that we have for people to make decisions by using other people's money to do that. So we need to get the system right, because it's hampering people. And the maths doesn't work for anybody. They're not even getting repaid. So the interest is rising at around £15 billion per year. That's the interest costs that are added, and only about £5 billion is being paid off. So even the Treasury's figures show only about a third of loans are going to get paid off over time. And they hang over people's heads for 30 years if it's Plan 2 or 40 years if it's a Plan 5 loan. It is a wrong system and it needs to go.
Shouldn't it just be interest-free? You've got to repay the loan.
Well, we're going to be very clear. We want the government to act. We want the Treasury to act. We are not giving the template for what that needs to look like. We need the government to go off and do the work on this and find a sustainable way forward. However, what we are saying is there has been a growing realisation that these loans are unfair. And like I say, we've got MPs moving through their committees in the House of Commons. We've got the opposition parties. Kemi Badenoch has a new deal that she says for young people. We think it's a good first step. We actually don't think it goes far enough because it doesn't really help the sort of lowest 20% of earners of graduates. But what we are saying is we need you. If you are somebody who has a student loan, if you're a student that's worried about future debts, if you're a parent or a grandparent, or just somebody like me whose child isn't quite at that age yet, or who was old enough to have escaped it, but thinks that it's unfair, please sign up to www.fairfees.uk. And if you can, if you're trapped in that system, give us your story, because we need to build up a list of people's stories and how it's affecting them, because we need to pressure the government to act. Because, you know, as you said in your last interview with Dame Jackie Smith, with Baroness Jackie Smith, sorry, you know, the government's distracted at the moment with leadership. It needs to focus on its day job, and sorting out a system that is manifestly unfair, that is affecting over 5 million people in this country at the moment, needs sorted.
Just finally, Ruth, while we've got you, you obviously launched this new centre-right movement with Angie Street, the former Mayor of the West Midlands, for the politically homeless. Since then, Kemi Badenoch's done pretty well. Her approval ratings are actually outperforming the other leaders. She's received plaudits in recent weeks for the way she dealt with the Henry Nowak case. Were you barking up the wrong tree earlier this year? Do you regret it?
No, absolutely not. We've gone from strength to strength. We've got more than 20,000 signed up supporters. We've been doing events all around the country. We've been trying to take politics outside of Westminster. And the thing that is the most pleasing for us, as a group of people who are Conservatives, that are on the centre right of our party, is that over 65% of the people that are supporting us are not Conservatives, as in they did not vote Conservative at the last election. So it's about bringing that message of being pro-growth, bringing that message of, you know, quite often centre, whether it's centre-left or centre-right, the centre is not seen as a sexy place to be in politics. You know, you don't get headlines for arguing for moderation, but there is a way that we can focus less on the heat and light of social media spats, but more on what the country needs to do, getting proper policy provisions, getting things that work, that will help boost this country forward. And, you know, it is easier for a government, whether it's a Conservative, Labour, any other colour of government, to make decisions if there's money there. And it's easier for people in their own home to make decisions about what they and their family need if they've got money in their back pocket and they're not having to struggle from paycheck to paycheck. So having an organisation within a political party that attracts people from out with that party, that fights for growth, that will champion particular sectors of the economy, will look at issues that affect people or that damage growth. And in this case today, we're talking about student finance really hampering the decisions of young people that are starting out in their working lives. Then I think that's all to the good.
Ruth, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a little bit about Britain's energy industry now and policy attached to it, with industry veteran Lord Brown warning that Britain remains dangerously exposed to global gas prices and shocks triggered by the US-Iran conflict. He joins us now, of course, the founder and chair of Beyond Net Zero, as well as the former CEO of BP. Lord Brown, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Quick question to start off on the latest situation in the Middle East and how it might affect us. Clearly, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Rockets are flying once again. And it's been closed for months now, not weeks, as many initially predicted. Yet oil prices, as a gauge of where we stand, still below $100 a barrel. Do you think there's a complacency about the extent to which this is going to impact the global economy, but our economy?
Probably not. I mean, the physical market is quite controlled at the moment, and it's because demand is coming down, so quite a lot of demand destruction's happened, and actually we are relying on stocks of crude oil and products that have been built over time. And when we went into this crisis, there was more stock than normal. So we've been relying on both those things, and it's moderated the increase in oil prices. It has not moderated the increase in natural gas prices.
Well, that's relatively encouraging, though, to hear your take that on oil prices. Is there a moment, if things persist for another month or another week where you change your view on that?
Inevitably. It'll take a little while longer, but it's when stocks get down to what's called tank bottoms, which is stocks that really can't be used, that prices will begin to really rise above that. So as we move forward, people are making adjustments everywhere, but there'll come a point when there is no more stock, in which case the price will really go up.
Weeks more of it shut or months more?
It's probably months more, I would say.
Interesting. Let's talk about, I mean, it sounds like you suggest there that we learnt some lessons from recent supply shortages if we had enough stocks of liquid oil products, but not all the lessons if we didn't for gas.
Correct. I think this is about the 7th large interruption that I've had in my energy career. And I think we have learned something about the management of stocks of crude oil. What we have become complacent about is stocks of natural gas and what to do if there are interruptions around the world. We've become very reliant on just a few sources of liquefied natural gas to keep primarily the electricity industry going. So we need to do something. We need to increase the amount of locally produced natural gas, which I think we can do in the UK, and we need to importantly increase the amount of stocks we have of natural gas, and you can store it in underground reservoirs.
Obviously, the debate around whether we should drill more in the North Sea has lots of facets to it. One being whether, as a country, we'll continue to pay the global marginal price. And another facet to it is, that Ed Miliband suggests not drilling in the North Sea helps our green emissions. Is he right about that?
Well, I think he's wrong about in detail. For example, it is far better for us to produce natural gas, if we have it, locally in the North Sea than to import liquefied natural gas and to make it into a gas when it arrives in the UK. That produces more emissions than local production. The key is there enough gas to be produced commercially with a return for the investor in the North Sea? But we should allow the industry to make that decision, not make it for them.
I know you're a big supporter of things like nuclear, I think solar in particular, and like to see more of that. When it comes to things like natural gas and the North Sea, but more broadly our aims to reduce emissions, are we just a bit too arbitrary in those targets? Should we have a bit more flexibility in how we get to the destination I think all people want, which is net zero, but are we forcing the issue too hard?
It's always clear that the world needs more energy. So it's probably wrong to go in and say, we won't have this one, we'll have that one. It's almost having a strategy of all of the above. Everything should be there. They need to sort themselves out on how much each one costs. What is the cost of doing things? We'll sort out what we do and will tell us what we should do in policy to make sure we have enough energy to do the things each nation wants. What's also clear is that, given interruptions, we yet again have to look at where energy comes from, who controls it, and can we control our own destiny by having sources either with very close partners or domestic sources to make sure the lights stay on.
You mentioned that the industry should be left to decide what makes sense or not. Realistically, I think the total tax, if you drill in the North Sea, is 78%. Will the industry choose to pursue projects there, if they're permitted by the government? Will they choose to pursue them with those taxes in place?
So taxes have to be adjusted to make sure that there are sufficient returns, given the situation of the day, without giving people windfalls for old investment that was made with much lower costs. So it's always a balance. I think most people say that windfalls are not the sort of things that companies should have. While I must say, when I was running BP, the price of oil on average was about $15 a barrel. So very rarely did we get windfalls. But windfalls are important, but they should be controlled, because I think the public doesn't like to see that. And indeed, after all, the oil and gas in most countries in the world are owned by the nation. Oil and gas companies are there under license, operating to do their business, not actually to own the oil and gas.
So the taxes, it sounds like that you're not completely against.
No, they need to be variable. I mean, they need to be variable.
Just a final question, if I may, on BP. There's been a lot of volatility in the leadership there in the last few weeks at the executive level, CEO over the last couple of years, and then most recently at the chairman level. What's your snapshot on what's gone wrong there?
Well, it's 19 years since I left BP, so I don't have any intimate knowledge about what's going on. What I would say is really important is that strategies need to be very clear, and strategies include how do you run them. And I think the moment investors look, and I see this, what I do in my day job with Beyond Net Zero, it's really important to have an A team in charge of a company. Returns only go to A teams, really, and to make sure that the governance is stable. So I very much hope my old company gets to that point as quickly as possible.
Lord Brown, as always, a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great pleasure.
We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the latest from Florida ahead of the kickoff of the World Cup, following that England friendly over the weekend.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
Hello, it's 7 o'clock. This is the Kathy Newman Show. How long's the 5 million going to last, Mr. Farage? Let's find out. Diane, who would you put in there?
It's not for me to say. I want to see.
Not yourself, not you.
Do you ever look at yourself and think, are you the problem?
I do feel sorry for him, yeah.
We'll see what happens. Does it mean, frankly, that you are an irrelevant? Great to have this lovely couple on the sofa.
I know, what a dream team they are.
She's christened the couch.
Does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve? Did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
When you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek.
It was the day those present would never forget.
Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Welcome back. Now, the former Manchester United and Tottenham midfielder Christian Eriksen has been recovering in hospital after he collapsed on the pitch during Denmark's friendly against Ukraine. The game had stopped before it was abandoned when the 34-year-old suffered a cardiac arrest against Finland at the European Championship 5 years ago. He's since been fitted with an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, which has allowed him to continue his career. But, of course, that collapse happening despite that.
Well, the World Cup, of course, is just days away, and teams have been making their final preparations ahead of kick-off on Thursday. England's captain Harry Kane didn't seem too impressed with the pitch condition when they beat New Zealand on Saturday night in Florida.
It was a bit dry, a bit sticky for us trying to play the quick, free-flowing football that we want to do. Obviously, it was difficult at times, but we dealt with it well. It wasn't the most perfect game, but we got what we needed out of it.
Firstly, I can't believe how close it is to kick off the World Cup, which is incredibly exciting. And thought the weekend's game went pretty well.
Yeah.
It's just get everyone together. We won, so you don't have everyone like crying and saying, gosh, we were terrible. Obviously, it was disjointed. We changed the entire 11 at half-time, but it's kind of what you want from one of these friendlies. No injuries, progress.
And Thomas Tuchel came out, didn't he, the manager, to say, look, don't expect, you know, apologies in advance, don't expect fireworks. This is all about us preparing. It's about us trying things out. And also, to be honest, not tiring people out. There were a lot of games coming up in the heat. I should say, you know, our directors from New Zealand has got a slightly different take on the match from us, though. 100% I do. He's just saying in our ear right now. So, you know, maybe our biases are coming through slightly.
Well, I mean, I don't know what his take is. We'll report it live as he's telling us, but he's obviously been telling you a little bit. But the other kind of key thing I'd say from the weekend on this, so he's formally announced vice-captain is Declan Rice, which I'm a big supporter of, obviously. And it's interesting on this Bellingham debate. He's saying Bellingham's got work to do to be in the starting 11, but he's one of those 14 or 15 potential starters. And that's an interesting kind of snapshot of where he thinks things are, with Rodgers probably starting in the 10, Bellingham maybe still got a chance.
We should also say, of course, Scotland absolutely thrashed Bolivia in the World Cup warm-up, didn't they? 4-0, that was the score.
Yeah, good, fantastic warm-up game for them. And, God, it's exciting.
Oh, I can't wait. We can't wait.
Thursday.
I can't believe it's happening now.
I know, very soon.
Let us know what you think. You think it's going to win, what you're hoping for with the World Cup. Mornings at sky.uk. You can come and chat to us there anytime. We'll see you in just a few moments' time.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Hello, good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
Israel and Iran trade a barrage of missiles, defying calls from President Trump for restraint.
The Prime Minister is preparing to announce a ban on under-16s using harmful social media, according to reports today.
Ukraine's President Zelensky reveals exclusively to Sky News how the Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich is acting as a go-between in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine.
Also today, we're speaking to former Crime Watch presenter and campaigner Nick Ross about his first-hand experience of the criminal justice system.
The Sikh community calls for an inquiry into Henry Novak's murder, saying they warned the police about his killer and Henry's death was preventable.
Very good morning to you. Iran and Israel are trading missile strikes this morning. The ceasefire, if you can call it a ceasefire still, is being stressed to the max. Let's bring you up to speed with the latest.
So overnight, Iran launched a wave of ballistic missiles against Israel, the first attack in 100 days. Iran said the strikes are in retaliation for Israel's continued attacks on Lebanon and called it the beginning of a full week of continuous strikes.
President Trump had urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to hit back. He told US media outlet Axios, "I'm going to call Bibi right now and tell him not to retaliate. Each of them had their fun. Israel had its strike and Iran has had its strike. We don't need another one."
But this morning, Israel launched strikes on military targets in western and central Iran. A short while ago, the Israeli Defense Forces say another wave of Iranian missiles has been fired towards Israel and its defensive systems are working to intercept that threat.
Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons is in Jerusalem for us. Adam, good morning to you. Gauge for us the scale and significance of these attacks in the last 24 hours in light of the fact that clearly since April there have been exchanges. Are these much more than exchanges we've seen in recent months?
Yeah, these are full ballistic missiles being traded between Iran and Israel. Not that long ago, we saw the telltale trace of smoke up in the air near us of a missile interception in the skies above here in Jerusalem. So this is an escalation. There is no doubt about that. And it's part of what has been a 24 hours of increasing escalation. First, Hezbollah firing rockets to Israel, Israel responding with an attack on Beirut, and then Iran saying that that is a breach of a peace deal and taking that as a catalyst for them to launch waves of ballistic missiles towards Israel yesterday, focused on north and central Israel. Now, those were all intercepted. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, now found himself in that curious position of clearly wanting to respond and at the same time being told by Donald Trump, his most powerful ally, one of his few remaining outspoken allies, that he should not do so. Why? Well, Trump said that a deal was on the brink of being signed with Iran. We've heard that many times before. I think it was almost impossible to imagine that Netanyahu, a man with an election later this year, could possibly have just let this event, to take this on the chin, to allow Iran to launch ballistic missiles at Israel. There was no way he was going to accept that. So he did respond in the small hours, firing missiles at military infrastructure and also, we understand, at a petrochemical facility in Iran. This was not a huge, devastating onslaught. These were missiles, I understand, mostly fired from the air towards Iran. And now the response has come from the Iranians, a number of missiles being fired again. This, I said, though, what we're not talking about here are huge numbers. We are still, I think, at the kind of tit-for-tat stage. Iran may have talked about a week of sort of huge attacks. Well, remember that we get a lot of rhetoric from Tehran. It's not always backed up. At the moment, these are still relatively small-scale attacks, nor have we seen Iran launching attacks at other countries. We haven't seen the sort of attacks on Dubai that you might have expected. Although the ripples of nerves around this have led to a spike already in the oil price, which is up about 5% to just under $100 a barrel. And I think that will trouble Donald Trump because, of course, what he wants is a deal to open the Strait of Hormuz. He wants shipping moving through there again, and he wants to see oil prices falling so that American voters don't give him a hard time about the prices they're paying at the pumps. And it is, I think, in a sense, as simple as that. Trump wants a deal. What he doesn't want is another big conflict here. But on the ground, in this region, it feels more tense, it feels more volatile and unpredictable. This is still, as trading missiles goes, relatively limited. But it is a spark, and it could catch fire and expand and escalate rapidly.
Adam, thanks so much for that context. Unsurprisingly, oil is up off the back of all of that. We've got down to the low 90s last week in terms of the Brent oil prices now up at the high 90s, up 5% itself today at $97.60. And at 8:30, so in 20 minutes or so, we'll be talking to the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett about all of that. So stay tuned for that.
Now, domestically, a lot is moving when it comes to social media, when it comes to tech regulation. And there are reports today that the Prime Minister is preparing to announce a ban on under-16s using harmful social media. So here to tell us more is our political correspondent, Alex Rogers. So it's nothing official, but it feels like we're moving towards this situation. What is the reporting?
It does, yeah. It's being trailed pretty heavily. So according to the Times, and Number 10 aren't quite steering away from it. The government wants to sort of ban harmful or high-risk platforms while allowing children access to some safer ones. Also restrictions on addictive design features like scrolling, push notifications and autoplay. It kind of feels like they're backing away a little bit from a full-scale ban. Maybe they've observed what's going on in Australia, where there are reports that it's not really working as intended, that children are sort of circumventing it and even using their parents' phones. We heard from Jackie Smith, Government Minister, earlier today. This is what she had to say.
This isn't as clear-cut as some people like to think it is, which is exactly why the government has taken the approach it's taken.
You've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice.
Well, you've got to make a decision about what, in a range of ways, is the most effective thing to do to protect young people from the disadvantages and the dangers of social media. That's what you've got to do. And the best way of doing that is by doing it based on evidence, by listening to what people say. Look, we're moving...
Well, 75% of people say
on this.
That there should be a ban.
We're moving quickly on this. We set out the basis of the consultation. We've consulted widely. We've already passed legislation to enable us to take action on it.
I mean, it's always difficult talking about something before it's actually been announced, right, and to get the details. But there's just a couple of, you know, it almost feels like they're trying to give the headline that they're banning social media for under-16s. But if it is just certain sites or websites that don't do X, Y, Z and comply with things that they want them to do, that's quite different.
It feels like they're trying to find a halfway position. And we know that they're trying to find this balance between protecting children, which is really supported by the public and Labour MPs, while also not going too heavy-handed on the regulation and annoying the tech firms and America. So they're probably trying to find that balance, but maybe they end up not pleasing anyone. There is something else I just want to bring in, Sophie, that I want to mention. So the Prime Minister's giving a speech today on AI and helping young people into jobs. I'm also picking up that they might be announcing something on nude images, blocking nude images on children's phones. So trying to get tech companies to bring in these controls voluntarily, giving them a time frame of about 3 to 6 months and saying, if you don't do this, we'll legislate. And if you don't comply with the legislation, they could be criminally or financially liable. So it does feel like they know they need to be tougher. And we know Keir Starmer's on the ropes. And this might be, you know, one of his final acts to try and get MPs back on side and stay in Number 10, really.
Alex, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. And by the way, the Prime Minister's speech due at 9 a.m. We'll bring you that live, but then we'll get reaction to all of that at 9:40 from the former Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips. Of course, lots to discuss with her.
Yeah, she resigned the lack of action over these child nudification images that Alex was just talking about, saying that the technology is there to stop young people taking naked pictures of themselves and sending it to other people. Why isn't the Prime Minister doing anything? Well, it might be today does.
Lots to discuss with Jess Phillips, who's team streeting.
Well, we think so because she's sat next to him during the resignation speech, which I think is a pretty clear indication of where someone's loyalties lie.
Well, they also did a podcast episode over the weekend, I think, in someone's kitchen. I think it was her kitchen. I didn't actually watch it. I saw it teased. So I think it's, I imagine we're heading that direction.
I think we are. Cheeky question from you to confirm it later on.
I don't think it'll be a cheeky one. It'll be a pretty blunt one.
Exactly.
But we never reveal our questions. I hope she's not watching yet. She almost certainly is, let's be honest.
Well, we'll see, we'll see.
Right, let's move on. At least 4 people are dead and more than 200 injured after a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck off the Philippines' southern coast. We can bring in our Asia correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, who's there now for us. Cordy, good morning to you. What is the latest on this?
Good morning to you, Wilf. Well, it sits the Philippines in this very kind of tectonically complex area, so it is used to earthquakes. It suffers hundreds of them, along with Indonesia, every year. But this was a particularly strong one, a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, and it was felt as far as 420 kilometres away in Indonesia, and it triggered a lot of tsunami warnings. Fortunately, most of those have subsequently been lifted, but I just want to show you some of the picture that captures how terrifying it was when it struck this morning. These are images of school children. It was a flag ceremony in the morning when they suddenly felt this ground shaking back and forth. Obviously, an incredibly scary ordeal for them. Fortunately, no injuries at that elementary school, but it does just show you how shaking these experiences can be for people. And the main sort of focus and epicenter of the earthquake was General Santos. That's an area famous for tuna in the country. It's also home of the boxing champion Manny Pacquiao. Just want to show you some video from there that shows some of the damage on buildings. There was one building that was housing a very famous fast food restaurant there. And suddenly, when the earthquake hit, it just completely collapse. There's been a lot of that dramatic imagery coming out of the Philippines. The death toll currently is at 12. They are still investigating, and at least 129 people have been injured. But as I say, those tsunami warnings have been lifted. And this all comes 8 months after a devastating earthquake in the island of Cebu in the Philippines that claimed the lives of 79 people. We've seen the Philippine government responding pretty quickly this morning, making sure they've got their emergency plan in place. But nevertheless, this, of course, a very worrying start to the day for many people in the country.
Cordy, thanks so much for that. Cordy, there live for us in Asia this morning.
Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the UK trying to shore up support from key European allies. So he's meeting King Charles later today after visiting Keir Starmer in Downing Street yesterday.
Well, he met not just with the Prime Minister, but also with the French President Emmanuel Macron and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, discussing ramping up weapons production to combat powerful Russian missiles.
Now, before those talks, President Zelensky spoke exclusively to Sky's Yalda Hakim. It was a fascinating and illuminating interview. He spoke about what he would be prepared to sacrifice for peace talks. He also said that the Russian oligarch and the former Chelsea owner, Roman Abramovich, has been acting as a kind of go-between between the two leaders. Let's listen.
Of course, I want to freeze not just freeze the conflict, because we want to live in Ukraine, not just stop the war. We want to stop, and stop the way when the war will not come back because of some crazy people and etc. if they want to come back with this war after some pauses. So it's not the idea just to freeze, but the quickest way to freeze. And to freeze and move it to diplomatic sector, to diplomacy, to negotiators.
So give Russia what they want in this moment, the land that they have gained.
No. It's not just to give. To freeze, to stay where we stay It meant to give people of Ukraine more possibilities to save their children and soldiers come back. And I think this is important for us. I think it's so important that we defended independence, a sovereign country, our choice. This is big victory, if I can use such word, because I mean, when you have so many losses, it's not about victory.
And in the meantime, you'll reach out to the likes of Roman Abramovich and others to try and help you in that path?
Abramovich, he came to Kiev. He said that I think that, he said, I have a message direct to you and I want to get message and take message from you and to give it to Putin.
So is he a go-between now?
When he got message from me, he said he will go directly to Putin. I said, okay, I'm ready to meet. Not in Moscow, not in Belarus, and not in Minsk, and it's understandable why. And I said, you can choose any time from tomorrow. You can choose any day, any format. We can choose with President Trump. I'm sure that he will be ready to come. And we can do it with Europeans. I'm sure that everybody wants to help, or we can choose the way bilateral, just bilateral meeting. And we spoke about outcomes, what can be, and etc. I said, look, the best way, I think it's a big signal if we will meet and make ceasefire.
It was a really interesting interview that Yalda did that with President Zelensky. Of course, it was exclusive, lots of lines coming out of it, but that whole demeanour as well, we discussed it with Yalda last hour. He's clearly much less negative in tone than perhaps he has been for years, let alone months now, and well worth watching that QR code on the screen now.
Now, hundreds of NHS patients have been harmed due to errors that should never have happened, including operations on the wrong part of the body and medical objects like gloves or surgical instruments being left actually inside the patients.
Never events are patient safety incidents that are so serious that they should never happen and are preventable. Let's bring in our correspondent, Ollie, who's here with us with more on this particular set of details.
Yeah, so 403 of these events happened between April 2025 and March 2026, and they are so serious they should never happen. They're meant to be totally preventable, and there's meant to be steps in place where the doctors and nurses, the people who are inside the operating theatres, are going through checklists to make sure that they're not leaving gloves inside people, that they're not leaving medical swabs or some of the equipment that they've used in that surgery, because there was 121 cases in the last year where that happened to patients. In another 50 cases, people had the wrong prosthetics or implants put in, so the wrong type of hip or the wrong type of knee. And then there were a further 40 patients who had the wrong body parts operated on. So instead of the left leg being operated on, say they had the right leg being operated on. It's really quite serious for these patients.
I can't get over this, to be honest. I mean, like, obviously, we all know the pressure that the NHS is under, the fact that people are working long shifts, mistakes happen. But to leave a pair of gloves in someone or to operate on the wrong leg, I mean, this is a whole nother level of just carelessness, incompetence, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and what happens is those patients have then got to come back to hospital, go under the knife again to get something taken out. They may then get told, actually, we can't do the original surgery that we needed to do for another 2 or 3 weeks because of the delays and the pressures that they're under. So patients are then in pain, having to wait even longer for the original surgery that they wanted. The NHS has said that, you know, thankfully these incidents are quite rare when you look at how many operations take place in the NHS every year. 403 is a tiny drop in the ocean. But where these things do go wrong, then the NHS trusts need to be looking into what happened, putting in action plans to make sure it doesn't happen again. The only issue with that is, for the period from 2024 to 2025, there was exactly the same number of incidents that happened last year. So we're not seeing things improving. And for years, in the medical industry, there's been talk about learning from the aviation sector, where they're very open, they're very transparent about the mistakes that have been made. But some doctors still don't believe that that's a comparable industry that you can work with.
Ollie, good stuff. Thanks so much. Now, the Sikh Federation is calling for a public inquiry into Henry Novak's murder, insisting his death might have been prevented if police had acted after members of the Sikh community raised concerns about the killer's behaviour. So
Sky News spoke to an anonymous informant who previously reported Vikram Digwa to the authorities, describing him as a monster. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
Vikram Digwa selecting his swords at a Sikh martial arts event in East London. The video shared with Sky News was taken 2.5 years before Digwa went on to kill teenager Henry Novak. A death which the Sikh community believe might have been prevented, given they'd already raised concerns about him to police.
Where this is actually going is we have been thrown under the bus, and our sacred Qurban has been called into question.
With Sikhs across the UK facing a backlash following Digwa's conviction, political lobbying at the highest levels is underway in the UK and from India, with calls for a public inquiry.
The reason why we've called for a public inquiry is the only way to get to the truth surrounding this whole affair, so we can learn the lessons and to learn whether actually Henry's life could have been saved.
Which you think it could have been?
Absolutely, because if the police had acted on the reports to them and CPS had taken this seriously, Digwa could have been off the streets.
In 2023, Vikram Digwa had been reported to police by his local Gurdwara, or place of worship. We've spoken to the person who says they lodged the complaints over what they describe as safeguarding and the theft of weapons. We've revoiced their words.
I was really deeply concerned and made the reports to the necessary people and also chasing them as well. It really did impact me for a long time, his behaviour. He is a monster. He's not at all representative of Sikhs in our eyes.
In response, Hampshire Police told us police followed up all available lines of inquiry and arrested 2 men in their 20s on suspicion of theft. On the basis of the evidence which was made available to the police, no further action was taken against these men. The Sikh community prides itself on its peaceful integration into British society. But since Digwa's trial, it's been subjected to a torrent of hatred online and at this Gurdwara in West London on the phone.
We have got nasty, poisonous phone calls received in our office yesterday by a number of people saying nasty things about our religion.
What do they say?
They're calling Sikhs murderers and using very dirty, foul language against us.
In the West Midlands, police are treating an attack on 6 members of a Sikh family as racially motivated. This 72-year-old man was left with a broken cheekbone and fractured shoulder. He and 5 members of his family were punched and kicked to the ground, the Sikh Federation believes because of Digwa's actions. The Sikh community is fighting back, believing it's being punished for the actions of another and viewed with suspicion in a way they've never been before. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Well, Debinjit Singh, the Chief Executive for Political Engagement at the Sikh Federation UK, is with us now. Thank you so much for being with us. I think it's such an important message to get across. This is not a community that is closing ranks around a murderer. This is a community that has repeatedly flagged concerns about the murderer, right?
And it's been really difficult because when the trial was going on, we had to issue a community statement when the trial was going on saying, let the law take its course. But as soon as he was found guilty, we've then been out in the open and lots of evidence has emerged, not just from what you've broadcast. I think the neighbours shared video with the police and the police apparently have lost it. And that's why we've come out and say there needs to be a public inquiry, because this isn't just about the police. We were all horrified when we saw that webcam, the body cam video. But it's the CPS, they were involved, even the courts. And it is a multi-agency failure. And we shouldn't forget, at the end of the day, an 18-year-old lost his life. We must learn the lessons.
How explicit and deep do you think the warnings were to the police about Digwa?
I got interviewed by another media channel, and the person came from Southampton, and he said, the police said he was on our radar. He had a violent tendency. You know, I won't even go through some of the safeguarding issues at the temple that were all reported to the police with video footage. So for the police to say they didn't have enough evidence, I think it even calls into question the officers that were called. If they had that intelligence, had that knowledge that Digwa, and it wasn't just Digwa, it was his brother as well. I'm not saying Henry would be alive today, but I think what a public inquiry could do is to say the likes of Digwa shouldn't be walking on the streets with offensive weapons.
So you're calling for a public inquiry, that's what you want to see?
Absolutely, and we have, we've engaged with politicians at the most senior level, and this morning we're actually calling them to all come together. Here is an opportunity to take out the frenzy we've seen globally about Henry. We owe it to the family to say, if there's even a small chance his life could have been saved, we want to prevent anything like this happening to any other young person.
How do you feel a week or so on since all of this became public and all of this became something that, well, has been central to the national conversation? Speaking as you can on behalf of the Sikh community, just sum it up for us a week or so on.
It's proved really difficult because at the end of the day, the law's taken its course. Digwa's been sentenced to life, a minimum of 21 years. But what we've seen since the sentencing is every single day, cases like the one you've just seen, that was in Willenhall. There have probably been half a dozen cases in Southampton alone. People can't go shopping. People cannot do their job. Doctors, care workers, people can't walk in the park. If one person's committed a crime and he's a murderer and he's a liar, why is the Sikh community experiencing this when generally it's viewed as a very law-abiding community? And that goes back to people like Digwa shouldn't be carrying around offensive weapons if they've got a violent tendency. And my understanding of the new law that went through at the end of April, if you carry a bladed weapon with the intention of committing violence, it's up to 7 years imprisonment. And that's the knife laws just being approved a few weeks ago.
Can I ask you a bit more about this? Because obviously there has been a debate about the kirpan, right? And whether or not people should be able to carry it. The Sikh community should have this exemption for a bladed weapon because it's a religious symbol, if you like. So what are you saying? That if there are concerns raised about someone, about them having a violent past, they should then be banned from carrying it, whatever their religion? Is that what you think?
No, this is quite delicate because, in a way, the offensive weapon that he used wasn't a kirpan. That's been the dilemma. And actually, this is the other thing. CPS and the police have known about that murder weapon for over 6 months. But they released the image after the sentencing. As soon as we saw it, it's actually a Turkish knife. It's got nothing to do with Sikhs. It's not a kirpan. The law defines a kirpan with a curved blade. It's a straight blade. Now, for us to be telling the CPS and the police after they show the murder weapon it's not a kirpan, how did the courts say it was a kirpan? How did the media report it was a kirpan? And how did then politicians get into this debate? What we're really saying is any individual from any community, basically, we need to prevent knife crime. And therefore, anyone with a violent tendency, and if they're on the radar of the police, they should be taking precautions with those individuals, whoever they are. But I think for us it's just proved difficult because he was wearing his kirpan and didn't use that. He used a different weapon. And one of the things we're doing as a community, we've got a big meeting happening on the 14th. So we're actually learning the lessons for our own community, telling people what they should or shouldn't wear, what the law is, because the law is actually, it's a defence under the law. If you use your kirpan offensively, you're breaking the law. It's an offensive weapon. So it's a defence under the law. It's not a privilege.
Can I ask you, because you've spoken very movingly about the abuse that your community, the Sikh community, has faced since the murder. The police obviously, you know, we don't want to prejudge, but it looks like they awfully let down, the family of Henry, who've seen their son die in this terrible way. Do you feel that they've also let your community down by not acting on the warnings that you gave? And as a result, we're seeing impact on Sikhs, right?
I would go beyond that. I think they let everyone down, because at the end of the day, today we're talking about the Sikh community. It could be another community. The fact that we're being targeted, yes, is very sad. But I think, and this is why the inquiry is so important, we need to understand what were the police failings, what were the CPS failings, because the police can't take someone off the street unless the CPS pursue it. And then the courts, you know, the judge can only do what he is in court. And when we saw that knife, we thought, it's not even a curb hand. Why have we had this sort of debate? And it's very difficult to then put it back in the box.
So it's not just the individual officers on the scene, you're saying. It's a much wider breakdown. It's really fascinating and important to get your take, and you're so clear with your responses. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be talking about the latest exchange of missiles between the Iranians and the Israelis. We'll speak to the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. That's next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. A little bit of breaking news relating to the exchanges, of course, in the last 24 hours between Israel and Iran. Iran's foreign ministry's spokesperson has said that overnight developments will only worsen the chaotic situation of the diplomatic process with the US. Went on to say that the US holds direct responsibility in recent ceasefire breaches. Israel's actions can't be separated from US policies. As you can see, that press conference is ongoing. We'll continue to monitor it for you. But let's get reaction to all of it now. I'm delighted to say we're joined by the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, who joins us live. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. A big picture question, first of all. Do you think Israel had to respond in the last 12 to 24 hours to the Iranian missiles?
Yes.
And do you think in doing so, Israel is directly acting in defiance to President Trump, or where do you think President Trump's true feelings are in the last 12 hours?
Well, I think President Trump certainly respects the fact that we're an independent country. We were attacked last night by dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles, and any independent sovereign country has to defend itself. We did nothing to provoke this attack by Iran. We didn't attack them. They attacked us, and they explicitly we're talking about civilian centers, and any country would have to exercise the right of self-defense.
Do you accept that Israeli actions, though, in Lebanon could, not saying quid pro quo, not saying anything is okay, but could have triggered Iranian actions?
Lebanon is Lebanon and Iran is Iran. We seek peace everywhere. We don't want war. This war is not good for anyone. But both in Lebanon with Hezbollah and Iran, they are attacking us, and we have to defend ourselves. It's that simple.
I guess, you know, timelines matter, and since things were paused again last week after a high-profile conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, which maybe we'll come to, the next action, I guess, was Israel's in Lebanon. And clearly, not just locally, but the world does link these issues together. Certainly the Iranians do, so does the US, so does the international community.
You just missed one little thing in the middle. Hezbollah from Lebanon attacked our cities in northern Israel. That's what caused us to have to attack Hezbollah in Beirut. That's the little missing part.
Can I touch on the relationship between your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and President Trump? Let's start with the short term, first of all, because timelines yesterday obviously do put some issues up in the air. But President Trump was saying yesterday, I call the shots, I call all the shots. He, Prime Minister Netanyahu, doesn't call the shots. And I guess the expectation from all of our reading of that was that he was hoping that Israel wouldn't respond, as has been the case since. Do you think Israel is acting in defiance to the United States?
No, I don't. I think that the relationship between the United States of America, our biggest ally, our biggest friend, and Israel is one of mutual respect. Any country that respects another country will also respect its right to self-defense. You know, if your country was attacked by ballistic missiles, by dozens of ballistic missiles, you wouldn't sit idle. No country would. And no one would respect a country that does not defend itself. So we had to do it. There's no question there.
Clearly, it did come, though, just days after a phone call, which was reported by Axios. And over the weekend, President Trump didn't deny ultimately the framing of Axios' reporting of the phone call, where they said, the president said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, you're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this. So clearly the starting point isn't great in the last week. What's your feeling towards that phone call?
Well, I think national interest and national defense, self-defense transcends specific conversations. Look, I'm an Israeli citizen. I'm also leading the opposition, running for prime minister, and Netanyahu is my big opponent. I think he must be replaced for domestic reasons, domestic incompetence, real bad government. That being said, all Israelis understand that we can't just sit back supine and wait for more missiles to be lobbed at us and not act. Iran had absolutely no right to do it. Hezbollah has absolutely no right to be shooting dozens, hundreds of missiles and rockets at our cities. We don't want all of this. You know, if we could just have it all go away. That's what we would do, and that's what we're seeking. We're seeking ultimately peace to dismantle Hezbollah, to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, and to just lead our lives. That's all we want. Unfortunately, our enemies don't want that, and we have to defend ourselves.
I guess where I'm coming to then on this is, in the instance of the last 5 or 6 days, do you back Benjamin Netanyahu loud and clear over President Trump?
I back Israel's right to defend itself. Do I think everything is being done right over the past 15 years and 3 years and 3 months and 3 weeks? No. I think we could do things much smarter, much better, finish this war in a much better situation, much quicker. But that's an issue of competence and incompetence. In terms of right and wrong, definitely we have the right to defend ourselves. I've got 4 kids. I'm not going to let them be hit with rockets and missiles and just say, you know, it's just rain. We're not going to do anything about it.
Do you think that, I guess it's almost stating that as a fact, but do you think Israel has lost allies, rightly or wrongly, in the last couple of years? You could look at some actions by the UK government towards Israel, like recognising Palestine as a state as an example. And do you fear losing America as an ally? There must be a line somewhere where that could become a reality.
First of all, it's a very fair and good question. Definitely, Israel's international position, especially vis-a-vis Europe, is not as good as it was. It's much worse than it was before. But and that's not a good thing. We need allies. We need partners. We need business partners and economic partners and diplomatic partners. That being said, at the end of the day, we have a hierarchy. The first and foremost, natural intuition of any human being is to defend his family, to defend his nation. So we have to do it. We don't really have a choice, even if the price is a degree and even a meaningful degree of deterioration in our international standing. So I'm aware of it. We have no choice. Could we do things better? I think we could do things much smarter, better, quicker, and faster. But again, we first and foremost have to defend ourselves. There's no question about it.
Can I ask as well your view on the state of play in the UK at the moment, on a different topic? I guess, well, there has been clearly a rise in anti-Semitism. It's been well documented by a number of independent and official organisations. In the last month or two, we've seen some responses from the government across a number of areas. Are you pleased to see those responses from the government? Do you think they are taking this issue as seriously as it deserves to be taken?
It's too little, too late. It needs to be much stronger, much more forceful, and much faster. I'm happy there is some action, but it's not enough. And ultimately, the responsibility of any government is to take care of its own citizens. And when there's such a vicious and violent wave of anti-Semitism within your country, that's your responsibility. We also look out for any Jew in the world and stand for them. But ultimately, it's your own government's responsibility.
Just finally, to come back to the situation in the Middle East, what is your expectation when a meaningful, lasting ceasefire could be in place? That there's many issues that are much more important than how it affects all of our economies. But from that perspective, when is realistic to expect that day could arrive?
I can't put a timeline. I will say that I'm very eager to reach out and create regional peace in the Middle East. I think it's possible. I think the opportunities are huge. They're enormous. I think Israel itself is bursting with potential and high-tech potential. We've got, so many huge exits in AI and quantum and you name it. And we all want peace desperately. But first and foremost is our lives. And I think that if we can follow through and get this done quickly, we're looking at a potential renaissance for Israel, the Middle East, and the whole region.
Naftali Bennett, thank you for joining us this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Naftali Bennett there, the former Prime Minister, of course, of Israel, he hopes to be the next Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Elections in October.
To see how that plays out. An awful lot, of course, still to play out with the war in the Middle East. A very illuminating interview there.
Now, new analysis from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine suggests almost 16,000 deaths were linked to long waits in England's emergency departments last year. The report says the number of deaths associated with lengthy A&E waits has risen almost tenfold over the past decade.
Well, joining us now is the President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, Dr. Ian Higginson. I mean, look, this looks like a pretty dire situation. What's your main message this morning?
Our main message is, as you've said, that nearly 16,000 patients lost their lives in association with long stays in emergency departments in 2025. And this is continuing to happen right now. What we're calling is for this to be made a priority by the government. We've already heard this morning, there's an awful lot going on in the world, there's a lot going on in the UK. But these patients are human beings who are dying whilst nothing is happening to sort out the underlying problems. And that's why we pulled this report together today.
If you talk to the government, they say that actually waiting lists are going down, that things are improving. Is that a message that you buy?
Well, when they do that, it's a bit of look over here while the problem is over there. So waiting lists for what we call elective patients, so patients who need routine operations, are starting to improve, which is great news. Now, whether they're really improving or whether that's a determined effort to manipulate data is another question. But when it comes to the urgent and emergency care system, things are not getting better. And again, there's an awful lot of distraction going on, saying we're opening up urgent treatment centres, or we're doing this or we're doing that. But the root causes of this problem are simply not being addressed because they're in the too hard basket. And we're calling for that to be made a priority. These patients really matter, and they are not being afforded the priority they deserve.
Do you think the government is manipulating the data?
There's all sorts of stuff goes on behind the scenes when it comes to data. Within the urgent care system, we know that for years, data around the 4-hour standard was manipulated. We know that all sorts of tricks played around some of the 12-hour data, even in the publicly reported data. We've got ambulance handover times by offloading patients into corridors, making overcrowding worse, but making one set of data look better. And we're rather sceptical of the corridor care data that's about to come out as well. So yes, data manipulation happens the whole time. Meanwhile, while people are focusing on that and trying to make things look good for headlines, the problems aren't being addressed.
Can I ask about the kind of revolving door, if you like, of health secretaries that you've seen in recent years? Wes Streeting, of course, replaced by James Murray. Do you have high hopes for the new guy in job, or are you more concerned about the fact that, you know, it's just another new health secretary?
We haven't yet met with Mr. Murray, so I'm unable to comment about whether we have hopes or not. We look forward to meeting him and to offering our expertise in solving this particular problem. Sadly, there's been a lot of health secretaries under the previous government and now under this government, and it does create turbulence and make it hard for us to work with a stable set of people on finding the long-term solutions. What we will do, however, is we'll hold Mr. Murray to Mr. Streeting's promise to reduce or to eliminate corridor care by the end of this Parliament. That'll be a good first step towards the problem that we're talking about. And we hope that that promise doesn't disappear with Mr. Streeting, and that Mr. Murray and the government will honour that commitment.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Always good to have you on the programme. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll speak to the Conservatives to Mel Strike.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
Hello, it's 7 o'clock. This is the Kathy Newman Show. How long's the 5 million going to last, Mr. Farage? Let's find out. Diane, who would you put in there?
It's not for me to say. I want to see.
Not
You just
yourself,
accused
not
them.
you. Do you ever look at yourself and think, are you the problem?
I do feel sorry for him, yeah.
We'll see what happens. Does it mean, frankly, that you are an irrelevant? Great to have this lovely couple on the sofa.
I know, what a dream team they are. She's christened the couch.
Does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve? Did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
When you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Right, let's talk to the Conservatives now, shall we? The Shadow Chancellor, Sir Mal Stride, is here with us. Good to have you.
Thank you.
So it feels like things are moving when it comes to social media ban. Is this something that you welcome from the government?
Well, we've been calling for this for over 18 months, and in fact, Kemi Badenoch was right in the vanguard of all the pressure that we applied. So it is extraordinary that it has taken so long for the Prime Minister to suddenly turn around and say, well, we might start addressing access to social media, harmful social media for those that are under 16. And I have to say, Sophie, if you ask the question, well, why is it that now the government and the Prime Minister are suddenly looking at this in earnest? Well, the fact that Andy Burnham may be about to come over the hill on his horse and challenge him seems to me to be one of the main reasons why he's doing this, which is not the planned and sensible way that you should take.
I mean, I guess they would say
that
they've just had a consultation. They've looked at the consultation and they want to respond as quickly as possible after it.
So that's about the guidance to parents as to how they should look at social media and their own children. The other comments, though, that have been made are about should the government now be stepping in, and the signs are there suggesting they might be, to actually have some kind of ban for under 16-year-olds to having access to this kind of harmful social media, so Instagram and TikTok and various aspects of those kind of platforms, which is a slightly different thing. And it has taken them a long, long time to get to this point. And Kemi Badenoch and others in my party in particular have been pushing on this for at least 18 months, and so action is well overdue.
I mean, even for those who are in favour of the ban, I think would say it is complex, right? If you look at Australia, for example, they've banned Reddit, they haven't banned YouTube Kids. I mean, how do you draw the line, right? Because these are very practical and serious points to make.
Well, of course, you need to look at all these kind of issues and many others that are facing us as a country in detail and have a clear plan as to how you're going to address them. But that is not the way in which this government operates. And you look, in my area of the economy, for example, what we're seeing now is a very brittle and weak economy, and that is because the government did not have a plan. It didn't use its time in opposition to come up with the answers as to how they were going to get growth going, and we can see the consequences of that. And I think this is just another example of a lack of getting on top of issues and thinking them through quickly enough. And we were saying 18 months ago that they should have been doing that.
You're talking today about the high street as well. What is it that you're trying to highlight?
So the costs on businesses are enormous. We know that there are lots of pressures on people up and down the country in terms of the cost of their shopping basket. And if you increase things like business rates or you increase taxes on jobs, that gets passed through, in part at least, into prices in the shops. And what we're highlighting today is that whilst the Chancellor said she was going to be increasing business rates on online retailers, which sounds all good and sensible, the reality is that what the data shows is a lot of it has actually fallen on supermarkets, businesses that are selling food, and a lot of that is therefore being passed on to consumers. And tax policy is why people are feeling the pain in their shopping baskets. We're overtaxed.
Do you have a bit of sympathy with the government? Because, you know, a lot of those indicators were improving, weren't they, at the beginning of the year, before the war in Iran kind of came down like a great big clunking fist?
Well, I think any improvements that we might have seen blipping along the way come against a backdrop of a pretty low bar, because what the government did when it came in was very quickly ratchet up taxes, particularly on businesses and jobs. They destroyed growth. They went out and borrowed loads amounts of money and spent a lot of money, which has kept inflation higher than it would otherwise have been and interest rates higher. So I'm afraid that when it comes to managing the economy, I'd give them approximately 0 out of 10.
OK, that's very generous of you.
I'm feeling generous
today. You know, there you go, very generous.
If you allow me minus numbers, I might go there as well.
Thank you very much. Mel Stride speaking to us there.
Well, mentioned there the Makerfield by-election. Let's show all the candidates on the screen for you. They're coming up now, of course, on Thursday, the 18th of June. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll have all of the day's top stories, of course, reaction to the latest exchanges of missiles between Iran and Israel, but also the Prime Minister's speech live from London Tech Week, where he's expected to talk about AI. We'll be right back after this.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Will, good morning from both of us. Thanks for joining us.
Israel and Iran trade a barrage of missiles defying calls from President Trump for restraint.
The Prime Minister is preparing to announce a ban on under-16s using harmful social media, according to reports today.
President Zelensky reveals exclusively to Sky News how Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich is acting as a go-between in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine.
We're also talking to the former Crime Watch presenter and campaigner Nick Ross about his first-hand experience of a crisis-struck criminal justice system.
The Sikh community calls for an inquiry into Henry Novak's murder, saying they warned the police about his killer and that his death was preventable.
Good morning. Iran and Israel are trading missile strikes this morning. The ceasefire, if you can even call it a ceasefire, is in tatters. Let's bring you up to speed with the latest.
Well, overnight, Iran launched a wave of ballistic missiles against Israel, the first attack in 100 days of that ilk. Iran said the strikes are in retaliation for Israel's continued attacks on Lebanon and called it the beginning of a full week of continuous strikes. It says the US holds direct responsibility in recent ceasefire breaches.
Now, we know that Donald Trump had urged the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to hit back. He told US media outlet Axios, "I'm going to call Bibi right now and tell him not to retaliate. Each of them had their fun. Israel had its strike, Iran had its strike. We don't need another one."
Well, it seems Israel wasn't in the mood to listen to that particular conversation or comments from President Trump, and this morning launched strikes on military targets in western and central Iran. A short while ago, the Israel Defense Forces say another wave of Iranian missiles has been fired towards Israel, and its defense systems are working to intercept the threat.
Well, our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons is in Jerusalem for us. Adam, what is your take on the strikes that we've seen already?
Yeah, so it's been reciprocal strikes. First time we've seen ballistic missiles being fired by Iran to Israel and from Israel to Iran for a significant period of time. What we haven't seen are colossal waves of missiles. It still feels relative, and you're having to use these relative terms, sort of tentative compared to previous bombardments, but it has the capacity clearly to escalate both in numbers and in distribution as well, because remember, earlier in this conflict, Iran was firing missiles widely across the region. It's so far concentrated on certain sections of Israel, and so far it would appear that none of those Iranian missiles fired towards Israel have actually landed, that they have all been intercepted and fragments have fallen to the ground. As for Israel, well, Israel has just announced that it has actually carried out a second wave of attacks, this time using its air force to target Iranian air defense systems. That is a classic sort of military strategic move at this point to try and degrade the air defense systems, which reportedly over the past few weeks we've been hearing that Iran has done an awful lot to strengthen those. Prior to that, in the early hours of the night, what we were hearing were missile attacks that were aimed again at military infrastructure, also at a petrochemical facility, although the Israelis have made a point of saying that they are not destroying the energy infrastructure of Iran itself. I think once again, Israel is trying to make it clear that it is on the side of the Iranian people against the Iranian regime. So when you put all these pieces together, what you have is the makings of a resumption of conflict. But there's a few caveats. Number one is the relative indifference of the American president to this. Now, this is a man who, not so long ago, was talking about wiping out a civilization in Iran, was talking these sort of absolute hyperbole of sort of total victory that he was going to achieve. And now he's a little bit more meh about Iran and Israel firing missiles at each other and saying that he did not want Netanyahu to do this. By the way, I think there was no chance whatsoever that Benjamin Netanyahu wouldn't have wanted to respond in some form. It's simply not in the man's DNA. So where we are now is that both sides have fired missiles, both have had an opportunity to respond, both have made it clear that they think the other one is at fault. Iran has said that it also holds the United States culpable. But I think one thing that is really notable is on the margins of this. This is also about Hezbollah in Lebanon. Naftali Bennett saying he thinks the two things are different. The Iranians think they are enmeshed.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. We are going to take you straight to the Founders Forum and listen to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
All of you. It's really good to be back here at Tech Week. We had such a good year last year when we were here, and it's really good to see so many of you here again. Now, when we talk about technology, it's always tempting to jump straight to the future, to think about what may or may not be just around the corner. But today, I want to start with what we do know, with the stories being written across Britain right now. Stories like the one unfolding in Warrington. Now, you may not know this, but for centuries, Warrington was at the forefront of Britain's soap-making industry. And until a few years ago, a Unilever factory was its epicentre. Generations of local people worked there. Families built their lives around it. And for over 130 years, the smell of soap from that factory was a familiar part of daily life. But then it closed. And for many people in the town, that factory became a symbol of a community left behind. But today I'm pleased to tell you that story is changing, because that factory is being transformed into a new AI data centre, bringing in new investment, new skilled jobs and new opportunities for a generation growing up in Warrington today. Now, admittedly, you don't get many data centres that smell like hand soap. But young people can look at that site and see not what their community used to be, but what it can become. And there are stories like that all over the country, in Lanarkshire, in Liverpool, in Leeds, and they all speak to the same possibility. They give us a glimpse of an emerging revolution in technology, a revolution with the potential to transform lives, to strengthen communities, and create opportunities right across the country. And a revolution that Britain is uniquely placed to lead. I mean, Britain is the third largest technology economy in the world. Our startups have raised close to half of all European investment in tech this year. Now, just stop to reflect on that. Half of all European tech investment in this country. That's a profound achievement, and it belongs to so many people in this room. And that hasn't happened by accident. Each one of those investments is an endorsement of British talent, of British industry, and of the approach that Britain is taking. Approach that has, in no small part, been shaped by so many people in this room and by the conversations that we've had in the last 2 years. The conversations about what it takes to build a tech company in Britain, about the barriers you've told me about that hold business back, about the choices government must take if we want the next generation of world-leading firms to be world-leading British firms. Because we all know that great tech companies need the right conditions to succeed. They need the freedom to move fast. That is why we've taken action to simplify regulation and challenge unnecessary barriers to innovation. They need access to the best talent in the world. That is why we created the Global Talent Task Force and continue to strengthen the routes that bring more exceptional innovators to Britain. They need capital. And that's why we're unlocking more investment from pension funds and insurers, strengthening our capital markets and backing companies to scale in the United Kingdom. And of course, they need customers. And that's why I'm so pleased that we've struck trade deals all over the world. It's why we're using government procurement to open new doors. Now, people might hear this and think, that's pretty good going. Third largest tech economy in the world, half of all European tech investment, a pipeline of talent envied across the world. Pretty good going. They're right. Britain has every reason to be confident. We're on the precipice of something truly extraordinary. But that brings me to a bigger question. Not whether this revolution in technology is coming, because it is. Not whether it will transform our economy, because it will. The real question is what kind of country we want to be as it unfolds. The question is whether we shape this change or allow it to shape us. Because the way I see it, on artificial intelligence, Britain has three options. One, we could stick our head in the sand, pretend it isn't happening, and hope for the best. Well, I won't accept that. Option two, you can remove the guardrails completely and ignore the consequences. No matter that some communities might be left behind, that wealth and power might become concentrated in fewer hands, that our children might face an increasingly unsafe world online. But I can tell you, I won't accept that either. Or we can take a third path, the Labour path, where we back the British businesses creating the jobs and technologies of the future, but never lose sight of who that progress must serve, where British tech companies start here, scale here and stay here, but the rewards of their success are felt in communities right across the country, and where government is active in its approach towards tech, supporting risk-takers, making its own bets, providing the conditions for businesses to thrive, but also making sure we are sovereign, giving working people security and opportunity through change. That is our path. Britain leading this new revolution in technology with our firms at the front and our people at its core. Now that starts with backing our own innovators. Because if there's one area where Britain is already ahead, it's talent. I mean, this is the country that invented the World Wide Web, that pioneered the jet engine and powered the Industrial Revolution. Innovation is in this country's DNA. And it's the job of government not just to recognise the scale of that talent, but to match it with the scale of our ambition. And that means doing three things. First, we must make sure that Britain remains the home of those ideas and give our innovators the tools that they need to stay at the cutting edge. That is why this government has committed record levels of funding for research and development already. But it's not just enough for ideas to be born here. They have to be able to grow here too. So second, we must provide the right conditions for our firms to scale. That is why we're taking an even more intentional approach, crowding in capital, betting big on British businesses, and creating the confidence for others around the world to do the same. You can see that with Reflection AI, one of the world's most promising AI firms, who are expanding right here in Britain, creating 1,000 roles over the next 3 years because of our world-class talent pool. And companies like AMD, and we're going to hear from them in a minute, who are also doubling down on Britain. And finally, thirdly, if government wants innovation to flourish, it must be a regulator, yes, but it must be more than that. It must be a partner. So we will use the power of public procurement to support British ingenuity and give our innovators the best chance to compete for public contracts. That is why today I'm really pleased to announce a new strategy to develop sovereign compute capability. It includes a major new commitment to purchase specialist AI chips worth about £400 million, providing a generational opportunity to some of our most promising startups. And alongside that, government will scale our testbed for AI compute systems, turning it into a national capability, supporting the British startups with our multi-billion-pound infrastructure programme. That, to me, is what an active industrial strategy looks like in technology. Building the foundations of the future, backing the companies creating it, and making sure the next generation of success lies right here in Britain. So, look, there's plenty for us to be excited about. But I know there are worries too. And we should all be clear. The British people need to see the benefits of this in their communities, for any of it to carry consent. I mean, I've spoken to workers who are concerned about what the growth in tech means for their jobs. Parents who are worried about what it means for their kids. And people outside of London who worry that it means nothing for them at all. That this is about somebody wealthier, somebody far away, somebody already ahead. But that is precisely why a Labour government matters. Because as we navigate this revolution in technology, our North Star will always remain the same: working people in every part of this country. And of course, that must start with safety. The pace of change cannot be an excuse for harm. And where technology poses a threat to our people, to our children, we will act quickly and firmly. Now, you saw that earlier this year with Grok. They allowed their tools to be used to create disgusting, explicit AI images. So we took them on. And all tech companies should know, if they fall short on their responsibility to keep people safe, we will act with the same decisiveness. And one issue is the ability for children with phones to send and receive nude images. Now, for too long, people have been told that is simply the price of modern tech, that nothing can be done, that government is powerless, that parents just have to accept it. But I reject that completely, because tech should adapt to the needs of society, not the other way around. And so if we're serious about unlocking the opportunities that tech can bring, then we must also be serious about protecting our children from those who look to abuse it, from the online predators who target our children, and from the sexual abuse that they enable. That is why today I'm calling on tech companies operating in this country to introduce device controls that prevent children from sending and receiving sexually explicit images. Because this is not an impossible challenge. These are some of the most innovative companies in the world, and I believe they can solve it. But if they choose not to, then we will act, and we will change the law. Because when it comes to the safety of our children, standing by is not an option. We will also make sure that our young people are equipped with the skills that they need in this new world. Now, last year, I set us a target of upskilling 7.5 million workers with AI training by 2030. I said that from this stage 1 year ago in this very week. So today I'm really pleased to report back that 1.7 million workers have already received that training. And while we can't know exactly where AI will cause disruption, we can know how we will respond. We can know whose side we'll be on, because the choices this Labour government has made already tell that story. More apprenticeships, higher education reform, higher standards in technical learning, our youth guarantee. These are not separate policies. They're our answer to a changing economy. They're about how we make sure, as tech advances, working people are not left behind. But that cannot be the limit of our ambition. Because when people look to the future, I don't want them to see something that they have to endure or to battle. I want them to see something that they can be part of, something that creates opportunity, that is hopeful, not just for those who work in technology, not just for those who work in London, but for people in every part of this country. Because the truth is that future is already beginning to take shape. AI is delivering faster diagnosis in our NHS, reducing court backlogs and speeding up planning decisions. Those are real benefits being felt by people across Britain right now. And we're going further on this every day, launching new tools like our AI tutors that we will roll out to the 450,000 children on free school meals to close the attainment gap. And today, I can announce our new AI jobs tool that will help those out of work find the right jobs, create their CVs, and get back into work. But look, the real prize here is bigger than any single piece of tech. It is what growth could mean for our communities. Stronger local economies, new investment, more opportunities for young people. Areas that have been left behind finding a new sense of purpose. The kind of change that we're seeing in Warrington, and the kind of change we can see across Britain if we choose to seize it. Now, I don't pretend to know exactly what the world will look like in 10 years' time. There will be new conversations, new technologies, new tools we use every day. The pace of change will not slow down. But in truth, that's not what matters most. What matters is whether Britain is ready for it, whether British innovators have the tools, the investment, and the backing that they need to lead it, and whether working people have the opportunity to benefit from it. Ultimately, that comes down to the choices that we make, the choices this Labour government is already making. The choice between a young person ready to seize the opportunities of the future, or one left struggling to find their place in it. Between a community that watches opportunity pass it by, or one that is revived by new investment, new jobs and new hope. And between a Britain that watches the future unfold, or helps to build it, Now, this government has made its choice. We choose to take control of our future. We choose to be ambitious about what Britain can achieve. And we choose to make AI work for the whole of our country. And in partnership with you, we choose to build a stronger, fairer Britain. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you.
Keir Starmer there talking about a revolution in technology, but the North Star will be looking after working people. He said it starts with safety. If the tech companies fall short on their responsibility to keep people safe online, he says the government will act. And there was a bit of a policy announcement as well, saying that tech companies should introduce device controls that would not allow young people to send nude images of themselves, right? And he's calling on tech companies to do that. If they don't, he says the government will, at that point, legislate.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, just to dwell on the first half of the speech, which I thought was very interesting because it was so positive in its outlook, and right to be positive because we are amazing in this country at early stage tech and innovation, as he was pointing to rightly because of the talent we have. And I think the issue we've had in the last 5 years has been scaling small companies into massive companies. And I think he correctly identified all of that. I think the question is it's followed now by the policy that's needed to deliver rather than just the rhetoric. But I think that the striking difference was the positivity of the rhetoric, which I think a lot of people would have said in the first year of government was lacking. And you know, confidence begets confidence. And I think that first year was very downbeat. And that was very different in tone.
Yeah, it's interesting. We can bring in Alex Rogers now, our political correspondent, on this. Honestly, you know, we didn't hear about the social media ban, of course, in the speech. We weren't expecting to. We did hear about a move to try and stop young people sending nude images of themselves to child predators. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't actually a ban. He's just saying, oh, tech companies, will you please do this?
Yeah, he's trying to get them to move first. He's putting kind of control in their hands and trying to get them to do this of their own volition. And then if they don't, then they'll change the law. So you're right. It's a bit of a halfway house. He could just have announced, say, you know, this is going to be banned, but the government really wants to try and keep tech companies on side. It's trying to find that balance. And I think there are people in the Labour Party that may be a bit frustrated by this and maybe pleased about the announcement that's come out today, but questioning why it's taken so long. I'm just going to read out a quote from a senior Labour person I've been speaking to about this. They say, for months, ministers, advisers, campaigners and victims were pushing the Prime Minister to announce device-level controls. They were blocked at every turn for fear of upsetting the tech companies. Investment and business relationships seemingly mattered more than protecting children.
I mean, look, there's no way... I mean, maybe I'm wrong, I'm going to eat my words, but I don't think there's any way that someone who won't even ban nude pictures from kids outright, that there's no way that he's in a couple of weeks going to be like, oh, yeah, we're banning social media for under-16s. I mean, I just cannot see that happening. I'm just going to lay my cards on the table right now.
And it does seem like that they are moving away from a full-scale ban, given what we've seen trailed today, where they talk about the most harmful platforms and those at high risk, while still allowing access for some of the safer ones and other restrictions. It kind of feels like they're moving away from a full Australia ban. Jackie Smith, government minister, that seemed to be what she was implying this morning when she was speaking to you. I think we can take a listen to what she had to say.
This isn't as clear-cut as some people like to think it is, which is exactly why the government has taken the approach it's taken.
You've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice.
Well, you've got to make a decision about what, in a range of ways, is the most effective thing to do to protect young people from the disadvantages and the dangers of social media. That's what you've got to do. And the best way of doing that is by doing it based on evidence, by listening to what people say. Look, we're moving...
Well, 75% of people say
on this.
That there should be a ban.
We're moving quickly on this. We set out the basis of the consultation. We've consulted widely. We've already passed legislation to enable us to take action on it.
And we'll continue this topic. We'll discuss it later with Jess Phillips in about 10, 12 minutes' time, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Let's turn now to the other top story of the last couple of weeks, and it's the state of the justice system and of policing more broadly. I would like to say we're joined now by the former Crime Watch presenter. He says his confidence in criminal justice was shattered after he was seriously injured in an assault in central London. He joins us now. A very good morning to you, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
You've written extensively about this. Just set it up for us. You were attacked yourself.
Yeah. First, let me say, my confidence in the criminal justice system has been pretty low for decades, having worked within it for decades. But, yeah, tell the story. About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I was assaulted in London in a road rage incident. I got out of my car to try and help a driver move aside. He was blocking up all the traffic. He, for reasons I don't know, leapt out of the cab, pushed me across the road, big, bulky guy, and broke my back, thankfully in a way that didn't cause any nerve injury. Police came. The Londoners were wonderful. Everybody sort of came round and tried to help. The police came, tried to take me to hospital. I said I wouldn't. I didn't want to go to hospital, but eventually I had to on my own, where I found out it was quite a serious injury. And then sort of nothing happened. The police officer said, yes, she would deal with it. She then went on night duty. A week later, I emailed, nothing much had happened. It took months and months and months. Once it was decided the charge might be GBH rather than actual bodily harm, could be grievous bodily harm, had to go to a detective. I waited a week for a detective to do something. Nothing happened. Then the detective wanted all the notes from me all over again. The whole process started again. 5 months later, they identified the suspect. We knew who the suspect was. Lots of people locally, all the witnesses knew who the suspect was. When they got the CCTV from hotels, which showed exactly what had happened, the police took, I think it was 3 months to view the CCTV, and they wrote down, we are extremely busy at the moment. This is a case of assault, and the police are too busy to deal with it. It took them 5 months. But what happened after that with the criminal justice system was even worse in some ways.
I guess just to sort of skip forward a little bit, I mean, do you pause and look back on this and think this is not the police's fault? Whether you're talking about the organisation as a whole or the individuals, because they are so busy, and as serious as this was, there's obviously some other really serious crime out there. Or do you think these things are addressable and fixable, and it is on the police to sort this out?
I think it's on the public and on the politicians to decide what they want the police to do. And I think we were asking them to do too many things, and they're not doing it very well. This happened in London. The Metropolitan Police has gone up from about 27,000 to about 33,000 police. At the same time, they're no longer making the traffic through. They've got traffic lights doing that. They're no longer patrolling the streets. You can go through London at night and not see a single police officer in the West End or indeed anywhere in London except marauding through on twos and blues. What are they doing if they're not detecting crime? Well, what they're doing, we've burdened them with a whole lot of absolute legal rubbish. That's the truth of it. We need to rethink the whole process. And 2 years ago...
You mean sort of like bureaucracy, essentially?
It's legalese. We've made them paralegals in a sense. The whole process when it comes to crime now is not so much preventing crime as trying to persuade lawyers and the CPS and then persuade the courts to follow up. So what the police do has very little impact now on crime rates. And the courts have no impact on crime rates. You can show certain crimes going up and certain crimes going down, and you can look at court disposal. There's not even a correlation between the two. What is the point of the criminal justice system? And incidentally, when it did go to the criminal justice from the CPS, I'm the victim, irrelevant. I do not hear from anybody in the criminal justice system at all. So the guy eventually goes to court, he pleads guilty. I am not informed. In fact, I am informed he's going to court, but I'm given the wrong day. So when I turn up at court, it's already happened. I ask what happened. Nobody knows. Did he have previous conviction? Oh, we can't tell you that. I mean, this is supposed to be open justice. You couldn't get more opacity into it if it was planned that way. And yet we, the British public, have such misguided faith in the criminal justice system. In my view, but I've said this before this happened to me, but this has just made it more vivid, we've really got to rethink the thing from the ground up. What are we trying to do with our criminal justice system if it's not about crime prevention, which it's not, and if it's not about victims, which it's not?
Do you think, I mean, there's criminal justice, potentially criminal justice errors, but certainly it seems police errors in the case of Henry Novak. What's your assessment of that awful situation?
How long have you got?
I mean,
I've been on patrol with police myself when this has happened. Years ago, I was in Wales. We responded. I was a journalist at the time, but we were doing this stuff with the police. I've been on patrol with the police often in this country, in the United States. And incidentally, the police here are marvellous compared to some I've been with in the States, which are so muscular compared to ours. We went to a domestic, stormed in. There'd clearly been a fight. There was blood, heaven knows what. They arrested the guy, got him out into the car in handcuffs. The other officer, actually, I thought rather cleverly, I hadn't noticed, saw that the woman was trying to conceal something. It turned out that she was the aggressor. She had stabbed the guy, not the other way around. But what you get is an expectation bias. You hear there's a domestic. Most people think domestic is men attacking women. That's the way you respond. So for all those critics of what happened in the Henry Novak case, I think we need to ask ourselves, do we not have confirmation bias ourselves? Do we not, when we're told to expect something, is that not what we see until it takes time we realise that's not what's happening? So here, I'm not trying to defend the officers. I mean, what happened was terrible. But I can completely understand why it happened. I've seen it happen.
I guess my question to that would be, you or I, or me, you who are obviously a crime expert, would have, perhaps could be excused for having confirmation biases that lead to how I think on the spot. But surely a police officer should be trained not to have a confirmation bias, to assess the scene as they see it and respond because their job is so important. And the question might be, has the training in the police force now gone the other way, that it reinforces these biases as opposed to gives them the confidence to act with what they see?
Look, 2 points to that. Firstly, they're Homo sapien, they're people. We're apes, albeit great apes, but we're apes. You will not get away from confirmation bias. It's how our brains work. Our brains consume more energy than any other part of our body. We have to make shortcuts in order to make sense of the world around us. You'll never eliminate that with whatever training you got. But secondly, to answer your point about training, look, for much of my career, the police have been under attack for institutional racism. I'm no defender of the police. I was saying earlier, I think the way they behaved in my case was just appalling. I'm not blanket defending them. But here, we're asking contradictory things. Institutional racism, they spend a lot of time and effort trying to persuade their guys not to be racist. And now we're saying you're spending... The papers today are full of all this waste of money that they're spending on this anti-racism. Look, this isn't just an issue with the police. This is an issue of society. We're very short-term. We're thinking of immediate things. We want this. And then when that goes wrong, we accuse the people. We don't think that, well, maybe we've caused this by our own demands. We're attacking the individual police officers.
No, I think that's exactly the issue at hand. I don't think... I think it's whether or not the broad training that they receive over the last decade is in the wrong place. Not attributing fault to that one individual or not, whether society has caused a problem.
I think there's a much more fundamental thing here, and it's got nothing to do really with... Well, it's not got nothing to do with race. It's a much, much more fundamental thing. It goes to what we want the police to do. When the police were founded, the modern policing in the early part of the 19th century, they were specifically not supposed to do detective work. Robert Peel be rolling in his grave. What the police have been hijacked by lawyers. That's what they do now in terms of criminal law. So I think it goes quite fundamentally, what do we want the police to do? If we want them to prevent crime, that is different from running around and arresting people after offences. And we've got to get that in proportion first. When it comes to race, I think they've made enormous advances. I really do. And I think... But you're never going to stop if you want your police drawn from the population at large, and the population at large has substantial pockets of racism, you're never going to eliminate it completely. Mm-hmm. And they're getting battered both ways on this. And I don't believe that here race training had anything to do with it. I do believe it was confirmation bias. They'd heard that this was the troublesome guy. He made excuses. Oh, I've been stabbed. Yeah, we've heard all that before. I suspect that's what happened. I don't think it had anything to do with the race. But what do I know? I only know what you know and what we've read in the papers.
Well, you know quite a lot, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Nick Ross, the former Crime Watch presenter. We should also say we reached out to the Met in relation to Nick's personal crime that he was speaking about there. And he said, we're committed to supporting victims of crime and are sorry that Mr. Ross's experience has affected his confidence in the criminal justice system at a time when the court system is seeing huge backlogs and delays. This case saw a suspect charged and sentenced in under 10 weeks. We would welcome the opportunity to meet with Mr Ross to discuss his experience as we continue our work to improve the quality of our service for victims. MOJ spokesperson, Ministry of Justice spokesperson, said the government inherited a court system in crisis with victims and defendants facing intolerable delays for justice. That's why we're pulling every lever available, record financial investment, systems efficiencies and pragmatic structural reforms to turn the tide faster.
Coming up, we are going to be talking to former Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women, Jess Phillips, about whether or not she thinks Keir Starmer has done enough in his speech this morning to protect children online. Welcome back. We had a big speech from the Prime Minister today. We're expecting, of course, him to say a bit more when it comes to a social media ban for under-16s. But today, he said that technology companies need to use these device controls to stop kids sending or receiving naked images of themselves. If they don't act, the government will. Well, let's speak to someone who resigned over this very issue, the former Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, Jess Phillips. Great to have you on the show today. So I'm just trying to get my head around this. Keir Starmer is basically saying, please, 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 technology companies, will you stop children sending naked pictures? What's your view on the announcement today?
So, look, the announcement today is the first step in ending what creates 91% of all child sexual abuse material. And that's the most important thing. And I am delighted that finally we are at this stage and the Prime Minister is announcing this policy. The the tech companies have to be given the time to build the technology or work with others who have already built it. The technology already exists, and I have seen it live in action, to work with whether that is startup tech companies that have this technology, to build it into their devices. And if they haven't made progress on that, I think that the Prime Minister has said that within 3 months they will have to, that we will legislate to force it.
I mean, I don't understand why he doesn't just legislate on this now, to be honest. It feels like a kind of open and shut case when it comes to, you know, as you say, like child sexual abuse. I note your resignation letter as well, where you said that this is one of the issues that you stood down over. The technology exists to stop children being able to take naked images of themselves. And then it said, it's taken me a year to get you to agree to even threaten to legislate in this space. Not legislate, just threaten. That's all he's done today, just threaten, not legislate.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to give good faith to the brilliant people within both the Home Office and frankly, some brilliant people in Number 10, and say that they have worked incredibly hard. The truth is that legislation, Sophie, wouldn't, even if what we were announcing today was the actual legislation, that would still take nigh on a year. So asking the tech companies to do it and then legislating, it has the potential to make this happen quicker. I only wish that we had done this a year ago, and then maybe this technology would now be in place for the children over the last year. But to be perfectly honest, legislation, I mean, I just took the crime and policing bill through, and it took 18 months to get the legislation through. So legislation won't necessarily be quick. If it had been started before, then maybe we'd be there now. But I want to see, and this is basically going to fall to Apple and Google. They are the device manufacturers and the operating systems leaders, to look very, very fast at how they can stop children taking naked images of themselves. I believe that, you know, I when I'm in London for work, I see the cars driving around with Google written on them that are learning to drive without a driver. I believe that Apple and Google could probably do this overnight.
Can I just ask about the delay that has meant we haven't done this sooner? Do you think it is a weakness of the Prime Minister because he listens too closely to what the big tech companies want? Or has there been a legitimate delay in trying to find out, you know, what are the lessons to learn from Australia's ban and the like, and that getting it right will be hard?
Well, look, getting it right will be hard, and also the Prime Minister has to balance, you know, massive investment into our country, some of the other things that he was talking about. So I can understand it from his perspective to a certain degree. I was on a singular mission to stop children being able to take naked images with their phones because of what I have seen, and so look, the delay, like I said in my resignation letter, and I stand by that. The delay came from a sort of squeamishness to sometimes take on big tech. But far be it from me to then criticise when he actually does it. And today he has taken on big tech and told them that they have to do this.
You obviously quit your job, you know, adding on the pressure for Keir Starmer to go. Mm-hmm. Do you still want him to stand down, to set out a timetable to depart?
I mean, I quit my job because of this issue that we are talking about today. I wanted to make sure that it got over the line, and so I am pleased that it got over the line. My views are on Keir Starmer's leadership and the incremental change that I wrote about in my resignation letter have not changed. I am glad that there's no sort of diplomatic way of saying this, that maybe it's given him a kick up the bum to do this, and maybe social media bans will be coming. I very much hope so. Anything that will do anything to give anyone a bit of momentum to get the stuff done that needs doing to keep our children safe, I'll take it.
Just to be clear though, do you want him to go or not?
Look, I think that Keir Starmer's leadership is coming to an end, and to be perfectly honest, I'd rather talk about children's safety and the terrible the terrible thing we're trying to stop than fret about which man is going to get which job at the top of government.
It's fair enough.
Would Wes Streeting be better? Forgive me for the follow-up.
Look, in my view, all I can speak to is on this particular issue, and not just Wes Streeting. There were other cabinet ministers that have been backing these children's safety issues for a long, long time, and Wes Streeting was one of them. So on this particular issue, then yes, Wes Streeting would be better.
Jess Phillips, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
A really important issue. We're going to continue our coverage, by the way, of focusing in on whether the government bans social media, what they're going to do to try and protect kids online. That is a priority for this programme today.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the World Cup, which is only 3 days away. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimated 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
Hello, it's 7 o'clock. This is the Kathy Newman Show. How long's the 5 million going to last, Mr. Farage? Let's find out. Diane, who would you put in there?
It's not for me to say. I want to see.
Not yourself, not
you.
Do you ever look at yourself and think, are you the problem?
I do feel sorry for him, yeah.
We'll see what happens. Does it mean, frankly, that you are an irrelevant? Great to have this lovely couple on the sofa.
I know, what a dream team they are.
She's christened the couch.
Does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve? Did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
When you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The World Cup is just days away, and teams, of course, been making their final preparations ahead of kick-off on Thursday. But England's captain Harry Kane didn't seem too impressed with the pitch condition for their friendly against New Zealand on Saturday night in Florida.
It was a bit dry, a bit sticky for us trying to play the quick, free-flowing football that we want to do. Obviously, it was difficult at times, but we dealt with it well. It wasn't the most perfect game, but we got what we needed out of it.
We had an email in from Brian who says, were New Zealand playing on a different pitch? Kane's getting the excuses in early, same old, same old. Brian's not impressed, basically.
Well, as long as, you know, we scored a goal, we won, clean sheet, no injuries, that's what you want from a pre-tournament friendly, isn't it?
I'm not reading anything into the friendlies. I'm not reading anything into the friendlies. I'm only interested in what happens when the actual World Cup starts. That's my rule.
I agree with that. Although, well, that's as long as we don't have injuries. That's the point. I think it's, you know, it's also changed. I remember the build-up used to be. I mean, I haven't got any data to back this up, but I feel like the build-up used to be much longer with a bigger gap, and you know, it's amazing how quickly this has come around. So I think that what you want to achieve in a friendly is completely changed, which is just get to the first game without injuries, right?
Although maybe what you want to achieve from friendly is what Scotland achieved.
Well, that also is,
friendly.
that's the ideal.
That's the ideal. This is Scotland there, who won emphatically, I should say.
A nice red shirt. I didn't know their away kit was red. I presume it's their away kit.
They did very, very well, didn't they? I have to say. 4-0, I think their scoreline there against Bolivia. So Scotland looking in fine fettle ahead of the World Cup.
Who play first? So the whole tournament kicks off Thursday. Scotland's first game is Sunday. England's first game is a week on Wednesday. Oh, it's exciting.
I'm honestly so excited.
The real problem, though, is I get up at 3:30. You get up a little bit later?
I get up at 4. Yeah.
Seriously, how do you make that work?
I'm very speedy in the morning.
Either way,
I've got a 10-minute turnaround time.
Either way, the point being is, with the time difference in the US, I don't quite know what we're going to do.
It's going to be hard. My other main issue is I think
I'm not going to miss a minute.
I think I'm going to bankrupt myself before the end of the World Cup by buying all these Panini stickers.
I thought you meant you were going to bankrupt yourself from tiredness by
that also,
getting through the group stage.
But in our household, we're really into the sticker books, and it's an expensive game.
You promised me you've got a spare Declan Rice.
I've got 2 spare Declan Rices.
Bring it over.
Yeah.
Vice captain. No
Anyone
less.
want to trade? Then
named vice captain.
Let us know. I've got a few swapsies.
Do I have to trade for it? What are you going to charge me?
Oh, well, I'll give it to you for free. Don't worry, Wolf. Plenty more coming up. We'll, of course, continue our build up to the World Cup. But a lot of news to bring you, including, of course, the latest move by Keir Starmer to try and keep kids safe online. That's all coming up. We'll see you tomorrow.